He lived to please everyone and died for the same reason, but reincarnated as the heir of the most infamous villain family in the kingdom. This time, he swore he'd live selfishly, manipulate people, assemble a harem, enjoy the chaos. But every evil thing he does somehow turns into a miracle. Now the son of a tyrant is being worshipped as a saint, and he has no idea how he keeps accidentally saving the world. Is he a mastermind or just misunderstood? Let's go. This story begins with the protagonist, Ogre Verret, who is 15 years old and thinking about sharing the secrets of a successful life with everyone. He had three main principles. The first was to live without changing his convictions. The second was to never neglect efforts to improve his charm. And the third was to never let anyone decide his fate. This was the path of true evil. Yes, this is exactly what he strove for, to live by his convictions and do whatever he wanted. This was his path as a villain. It all began when he saved the girl he loved. There was panic in the street, people were screaming, a man was hit. He saved that girl. Someone should call an ambulance quickly. It seemed she was unharmed, and he was glad he saved her. The policeman asked her, so this young man saved her. Did she know him? She looked at him, replied, no, she doesn't know him, and fled the scene of the tragedy. The protagonist chuckled. What an idiot he was. He played the good guy all his life, and this was what he got for it. He truly lived a worthless life. At first, she thought he was wandering around somewhere, constantly glancing around. Perhaps she felt guilty after all. However, it was a memory of his past life. He died protecting his lover, who was cheating on him. Now, he'd been reincarnated in a fantasy world as Ogre Verret, the eldest son of Duke Verret, an unscrupulous nobleman. Before his death, he'd realized he'd been too kind. So was he an evil aristocrat now? Everyone had waited on him in the mansion. The servants always trying to feed him properly, constantly asking him if he wanted more. Being a good person sucked. He didn't want to experience that again. Somehow, he'd been reborn as the son of a cruel nobleman. He would do it. In this life, he would do whatever he wanted. He would find beautiful warrior girls and make them his slaves. He would follow his desires. Thus, a man who aspired to become absolute evil appeared in this world. At that moment, he was walking to his father, pondering all this. When he approached the office, he knocked, entered, and apologized to Gordon Verret, the head of their family, for keeping him waiting. His father exclaimed, "Ah, it's him. Let him come in," and sat down. When MC complied with the man's orders, Gordon told him that he studied diligently every day and trained tirelessly. It seemed he was well aware of his role as the heir to the Verret family, one of the four great families. Ogre responded naturally. He thought of his father as a feudal lord, mired in corruption. He operated behind the scenes to catch his political opponents off guard. He was a true villain, exactly what he wanted to be, just like his father. He continued out loud, intending to follow in his footsteps and perform his duties well. Gordon replied, he was counting on him. By the way, starting next year, he'll become a full-fledged successor. He's enrolling at the Richburg Magic Academy, right? What will he do with his magic? The protagonist answered with a smile. This technology is one of a kind. There's no point in showing it off to everyone. The father laughed and said with satisfaction, he's damn right. And also, he needs someone to keep an eye on him in the dorm. Let him choose that person himself. The protagonist asked, really? Was he sure of it? Gordon exclaimed, of course. Finding talent is also part of the training, but he can just buy a slave if he wants. MC smiled and thought happily, this is it, the moment he'd been waiting for. He'll take advantage of this opportunity to acquire an excellent subordinate to become a model villain. No, that's not enough. He dares to subjugate a man with a sense of justice, and he will make him an accomplice to his crimes. That is what true evil is. Rising from the table, Ogre bowed politely to his father and said, well, he'll be going. Gordon asked him to be careful. Leaving the office, the protagonist was jubilant. By the way, he already had one such person in mind. So, today, he would get his first accomplice. The protagonist went to the outskirts of the royal capital in the city of Ushuaia, to an underground arena. Fights were underway there, and the spectators were going wild, shouting for the leader of the fight to kill his opponent. It was time for a real fight. In the arena, Chris Lagunica, the former captain of the Holy Knights, and her next two opponents were duking it out. One of the guys called her a rude word and shouted that he would kill her. The girl stood, calmly looking at her opponents. The guy continued, today she will definitely die. Her winning streak has come to an end. Let her die already. With these words, he rushed at her. Chris closed her eyes, summoned the skill Mad Sword Slash, and attacked her opponent, shattering his arm. The opponent screamed hysterically, his arm. The girl exhaled and said, too loudly, let him go away, at least silently. With these words, she raised her sword and finished him off. She also dealt with the second opponent without much effort. At that moment, the manager addressed her by name and told her to follow him. A guest had arrived. Surprised, she asked again, a guest? When she returned to the room, the protagonist was waiting for her. The manager apologized for the wait and added that he had brought her as he had requested. The protagonist thanked the man and looked closely at Chris. The girl asked the owner, who is this guy? The man indignantly replied, watch your language. For her information, this young man is a VIP. MC told him, no problem. Could he please leave them alone? The manager smiled obsequiously and said, as he wishes. With that, he retreated, adding that he would make sure no one disturbed them. He had told Chris to obey this gentleman. When the man left, Ogre told her that it seemed he had been misunderstood. He wasn't here to buy a woman. The protagonist was silent for a moment and then said, well, hello, Chris Lagunica, former captain of the Holy Knights. The girl stared at him in amazement, then shouted in irritation, How does he know her name? Suddenly, she saw his weapon and thought in surprise, his dagger with the Verret family crest. This guy is a nobleman. Cursing, she noted that the Verret family deals with foreign affairs and intelligence. She glared at him. MC asked her not to look at him like that, although he could understand her. After all, it was nobles like him who exiled her for a crime she didn't commit. The girl answered him irritably. Yes, that's true. She did it for justice. Human trafficking had become more common at the time, and she had managed to find the slave traders' base. It turned out that the aristocrats were covering for them. The girl remembered how, after her mission, she reported to the king. She discovered that the aristocracy was organizing the human trafficking, and she was asking him to punish them. At that moment, several aristocrats entered the throne room and told the king not to believe her. They added that this commoner imagined herself a knight in shining armor. They showed His Highness a document and said that it was proof that her accusations were lies. The king exclaimed irritably. What? Chris indignantly answered the king. It's all slander. She swears to him that everything is as she told him. In the end, the nobles got rid of all the evidence and painted her as a criminal. They took everything from her, including the title of Holy Knight. Resentment and hatred flared up again with renewed vigor, and the girl angrily asked him what he, a rotten aristocrat, wanted from her. Because of them, she was forced to swing her blade of justice in an arena filled with evil. In a fit of emotion, she grabbed him by the collar. The protagonist, without even making an attempt to free himself from her grip, ironically said, "What a disappointment." Where had her pride as a holy knight gone? The girl, astonished, let go of his collar and confusedly replied, simply, she's not one anymore. The protagonist grabbed her hand, pulled her close, and, looking her straight in the eyes, said he liked what a holy knight she was. He respected her. She always supported her comrades and never feared evil. In the fight for justice, she shone brighter than anyone. Chris stared at him in amazement, speechless, and then asked him to stop saying such things. Don't. Now she's just like them, making a living through violence. There's no turning back. MC spoke convincingly. No, that man is already dead. Holy Knight Chris is already dead. She agreed with him. Yes, that's right. She can't return to her previous life, he continued. Since she's dead, why shouldn't she start over? With him she can shine again. Let her follow him. With these words, the protagonist extended his hand. The girl, without thinking twice, placed her hand in his. The protagonist exclaimed, he swears to her, he will create a place where her justice can shine again. What was her answer? Chris fell to one knee, lowered her head, and said, okay, she swears to be his sword, and burst into tears. He chuckled and thought, easy as pie. This idiot is even crying with affection. He's just following his 3 principles of evil. He even posted these rules on the wall of his room. In other words, the story with Chris was the perfect one-man show. To make her his servant for life, he told her that if she agreed, she could go home right now. He wanted to introduce her to his father. Chris happily agreed. The protagonist noted, by the way, that her name had gotten a bad reputation. Maybe she should change it. How about changing the K to an A? Alice sounds more feminine, doesn't it? The girl, shedding tears of gratitude, exclaimed, what did he just say? He's going to give her such a wonderful name. She's so touched by it. Suddenly, she gasped, remembering something, and asked him if she could enter the arena one last time. The protagonist noticed, of course. But why? She told him she simply needed to prepare for her departure. She left, and MC headed for the exit, wondering if she wanted to get her things. Right, a weapon is always a good thing. However, from now on, any blade she wielded would serve evil, not justice. Yes, together they would take the first step down the path of evil. When MC entered the arena, he was surprised to see a pile of corpses, over which Chris towered. She turned to him and said that she was now ready. He wondered in surprise, had she left for a short while to cause a massacre? He had definitely taken the first step toward his goal by acquiring such a powerful pawn. But his first step down the path of evil proved too drastic. Chris came down to him and said that she had slaughtered all the bad guys to show him her justice. She laughed and joyfully told him that she would serve him for the rest of her days. The protagonist, surprised by the carnage she had caused, said, that's how it is. Sometime later, the protagonist arrived at the Richburg Magic Academy, the country's finest school of magic for nobles. MC, looking at the building, thought what a fitting place to lay the foundations for his bright future. He'd already taken the first step, securing such a wonderful pawn as Chris. The girl approached him, and touching her uniform, told him it suited him very well. She would also strive to be a worthy assistant to him. He thanked her. The other students, hearing her address the MC, began to whisper in surprise. Mr. Ogre, she said, the one from the Verret family? Chris, hearing this, told him that, as she'd expected, he was already the center of attention. For the first time, the protagonist thought there was a problem. Getting involved with this maid was quite dangerous. Chris overheard the students continuing their gossip, saying that the ogre was the son of a corrupt lord. Why did this loser enroll in the academy? The girl turned sharply to the students, grabbed her sword, and asked them if they were ready to die. The protagonist stopped her, telling her that was enough. He thought the Verret family was notorious for villains. He had expected something like this, of course, but not to this extent. How disconcerting it was. Now that he had gained fighting power, his next step was to acquire new subordinates for his harem. However, the current situation was not particularly conducive to that. At that moment, Karen Rebecca called out to him. When he turned around, the girl noticed that it was indeed him. They hadn't seen each other for a while. Did he remember her? Chris looked at her. wondering if she was a guy or a girl. The MC stared at Karen in confusion, then remembered. She was the only daughter of one of the 4 great families and his former fiancé. The protagonist approached her and said that it had been a while since they had seen each other. The last time they had seen each other, they were both 5 years old. Karen exclaimed, "So he remembers?" The protagonist replied, "Of course he remembers how he gave her that hairpin she was wearing." She told him yes, she still had it. Chris watched them with interest. He introduced the girls. He told Chris that Karen was his ex-fiancée. The girl asked him in surprise, "Ex-fiancée?" The MC said yes. They broke off their engagement because of some problems on his part. Chris exclaimed in amazement, "What is he talking about? Isn't he perfect?" The ogre told her that magic is the most important thing in this world. She understands that, right? The girl answered him affirmatively. He continued, "Except he doesn't have the ability for it. That is, he can't cast magic at all. For a nobleman, the inability to use magic is a fatal flaw. So, they had no choice, and Karen's family doesn't like him." Chris exclaimed, "It can't be." Karen exclaimed, "It's not true. In fact, Ogre had always been perfect for her." She shook her head and remarked, "Well, let him forget about it. They'll be late for the ceremony." The protagonist looked at her and thought, "It's nice to see at least someone familiar. But why did she wear a male uniform? There must be a reason." It was time for the ceremony. The principal congratulated all the new students and added that they could now take their luggage and go to their rooms. The students, recognizing the protagonist, began to mutter among themselves, "It's Ogre. They say he has no talent for magic, even though he's a nobleman." The protagonist, hearing this gossip, thought with a grin how funny it was that they all thought that. Chris ran up to them and, about to draw her sword, asked them sternly, "Did they just say anything bad about Mr. Ogre?" MC stopped her, telling her, he asked her not to. The girl objected, but it was so offensive. They had no idea what a wonderful person he was. When they went to move into the room, Chris, carrying his luggage, walked silently. He told her she was absolutely right. They were mere fools. He understood that she wanted to dispel their ignorance, but soon they would look at him with envy. After all, who laughs last laughs best. The girl, bending under the weight of her luggage, answered him, "That's just him." After some time, having settled into the room, the protagonist said it was time to move on. They needed to explore the campus. The allies set off together. Walking through the academy, Chris said, "It's spacious. No wonder this place is considered the best academy in the kingdom." The protagonist agreed with her. There were many beautiful girls walking around. MC thought he had already identified his next target, but finding her in such a large place wouldn't be that easy. At that moment, he saw several guys, led by Rook Bumbold, intimidating a girl named Mashiro Rice, laughing mockingly at her. The girl begged them to leave her alone and stop their attacks. The protagonist noted that it seemed like some lowlifes were gathered there. Rook arrogantly told Mashiro not to think that she, a filthy commoner, could converse with them as an equal. What disgusting eyes she had, she shouldn't look at them. The girl sheepishly apologized. Rook mockingly remarked, "What did she say? He couldn't hear her? Well, he'd have to teach her some manners." Chris grumbled irritably, "Pitiful scum, she'll deal with them." The protagonist rushed ahead of her, and she called out to him in surprise, but he silently apologized to her and thought, this is exactly the girl he was looking for. Therefore, he must show himself in all his glory. MC approached the offenders and gave them a good beating. Rook, sitting on the floor and wiping away blood, angrily yelled at the protagonist, "Does he even know who he raised his hand against?" The protagonist calmly stated his name and added that he was the second son of Count Bombold. Apparently, he's very sensitive about his status. He then told him his name and status, and sarcastically asked his opponent if he had any complaints. Rook's henchmen immediately ran off, abandoning their comrade. Rook himself cursed and threatened Ogre, "He'll get it back," and ran after his comrades. Chris admiringly told MC, "This is simply amazing. She had no idea he was so good at martial arts." He sheepishly replied, "Nothing special." The protagonist leaned toward Mashiro and, offering her his hand, asked if she could stand up. He wondered why he'd take her on as his subordinate. It was simple. Just for her luscious figure. The girl offered him her hand in surprise and thanked him for his help. Standing up, Mashiro brushed off her uniform, apologized for not introducing herself, and told him her name. He looked her over from head to toe and felt a little sorry for the buttons on her dress. He immediately stopped himself. This wasn't right. He needed to act like a gentleman. The protagonist handed her a handkerchief and told her that her skirt was dirty. Mashiro was simply stunned. He'd given his handkerchief to someone like her. The girl sheepishly told him she'd return it to him as soon as she washed it. MC laughed and said, "Nonsense." He added that he had to go. They'd see each other again at the entrance banquet. Walking away from the girl, he felt pleased with himself. Everything was going according to plan. Judging by her expression, Mashiro's affection for him had skyrocketed. Just as those idiots had said, she was the only commoner in this academy, and since he was the only nobleman who'd treated her well, it was only a matter of time before she'd fall into his hands. The protagonist turned to Chris and told her it was time for them to get going too. The girl couldn't hide her delight at his actions. She exclaimed, "He's so noble." The protagonist chuckled. Will she always react like this? After a while, they arrived at the venue for the new students' banquet. Looking around the spacious, richly decorated banquet hall, MC thought, well, that's quite impressive. Chris brought him a drink and served it to him. Suddenly, a crowd crowd of students caught his attention. He wondered what was going on there. Taking a closer look, the protagonist said, "The Crown Prince of Arnia Lundyism is there. By the way, he's Karen's fiancé now." Chris exclaimed in amazement. What did he just say? After their engagement was broken, she now has a new fiancé? The protagonist said, "It can't be helped. He doesn't have the gift of magic." Chris hissed irritably. Then why is he surrounded by these girls? What a disgusting fellow he is. MC asked her why she was so angry. At that moment, the prince approached her and asked if she needed something from him. The girl was very surprised. Did this guy sense her murderous intent? The protagonist approached them and apologized to the prince, saying that Chris was with him. Arnia looked at him and said his name, adding that he'd heard about him. He was a swindler with no magical abilities. Chris instantly became angry and wanted to tell the prince everything she thought of him, but MC told her not to interfere. He approached Arnia closer and apologized for not introducing himself right away. After that, the protagonist told the guy his name and added that he was honored that such a high-ranking official had heard of his humble person. The prince remarked, of course, he was famous after all. Karen, who was looking for the prince, approached them. He asked her with hidden irritation if something had happened. The girl, confused, answered him negatively and blushed with embarrassment. Chris thought understandingly, this crown prince is Karen's current fiancé. Understandably, hence the awkwardness. Arnia told the protagonist it was time to go. Well, shame awaits him for his lack of magical abilities. He couldn't wait to see it. After that, he turned to Karen and told her to follow him. The girl looked awkwardly between her fiancé and the protagonist. Chris thought about the girl, in such a position that she couldn't even apologize. This must be upsetting. Ogre told Karen, as she left, that everything was fine. He knew perfectly well what she was thinking. Karen quickened her pace. Chris looked after her in bewilderment and said, "Mr. Ogre, such a wonderful man. These fools dared to laugh at his lack of magical abilities." She looked at the protagonist and told him, "But it doesn't matter to him. He's far above all this." The protagonist thanked her for her kind words with a smile and, with an evil grin, said, "But this situation is so funny. They don't understand the mistake they're making." Chris looked at him in confusion and thought for a moment she thought she saw a strange aura emanating from him. Maybe she was just tired? At that moment, a young man approached them and asked MC if he was Mr. Verrett. He had a letter for him. Ogre asked in surprise, "A letter?" Opening it, he read the writing. It was Mishiro, who wanted to thank him for his help. The girl also asked if he could come to the backyard tomorrow morning. The protagonist, amazed, wondered if it was a love letter. A strange feeling had driven Chris to smash her forehead against a nearby column. Sometime later, the protagonist dreamed of coming to meet Mishiro. The girl, with tenderness in her eyes and voice, said, "He really came here. Thanks to him for his help yesterday." In fact, she wanted something more, and the girl was about to kiss him. MC woke up with a scream and exclaimed, "Wait, aren't they moving too fast?" Then he looked around and realized with relief that it was just a dream. At that moment, the door to his room swung open, and Chris appeared, anxiously asking him what was going on. Had someone attacked them? The protagonist reassured her, saying it was just a bad dream. The girl left, and he thought it was a dream, but it could soon become reality. He didn't expect Mishiro to send him a love letter right after they met. For some reason, he had the feeling she wasn't the type to take initiative. Or maybe he made her fall in love with him on the first day of school? What a villain he was. Chris appeared and admiringly told him that he was as handsome as ever. The protagonist straightened his tie and looked at himself in the mirror again. After that, he went to the place where Mishiro was waiting. Arriving, he apologized to her for keeping her waiting. The girl exclaimed embarrassedly, she was so glad he had come. Thank him again for helping her yesterday. Noticing her embarrassment, MC thought ironically, oh well, just like in a dream, but now he was ready. Let her not be shy in expressing her feelings. Mishiro, after hesitating for a few seconds, suddenly exclaimed, actually, she wanted to ask him to stay away from her. The protagonist looked at her in surprise and asked what she meant. The girl apologized to him, adding that it was annoying. She was returning his handkerchief to him. The protagonist noted with confusion, but yesterday she seemed happy. Mishiro was indignant. It wasn't true. He had imagined it. At that moment, Ryuk appeared behind the columns with his henchmen. MC didn't understand what was happening. What kind of nonsense was this? Giving her a handkerchief at that moment was a gentlemanly act. What did this all mean? The girl turned abruptly and left with the prince. The ogre realized with astonishment. It was Ryuk. Could she really be one of them? So yesterday, by giving them all a beating, he achieved the opposite effect. To her, he looked like an eccentric, not a gentleman. And this whole situation, a misunderstanding. Now it became clear to him, there had been a misunderstanding between them. The protagonist sighed and said, oh, these women. He didn't blame her. Chris irritably noted that Mishiro had been too blunt. After a while, the protagonist, sipping his tea, cursed silently and thought he hadn't expected something like this. He didn't know how to fix it, and was it even possible? Chris, holding the teapot in her hand, said in bewilderment, how strange, she hadn't thought Mishiro would act like that. But doesn't he find this unusual? She meant what she said. MC, puzzled, asked what exactly. The girl continued, if she was friends with them, it would be strange to thank him yesterday for giving them a beating. Such a change in behavior would require a good reason. Ogre thoughtfully noted that she was right, but now was not the time for action. He would simply observe what was happening. Chris looked at him in confusion, wondering what was wrong with him. He was usually much more active, and now he was just going to observe? Did he really want to see what Chris was capable of? She understood him. She absolutely had to find a clue for him. Then she would keep an eye on Mashiro. By the way, there she is. Where is she heading? Chris began to keep a close eye on Mashiro. MC, sipping his tea, thought he was simply tired. Sometime later, Ryuk and his minions gathered in the abandoned building of the Magic Academy. Mashiro also arrived. Ryuk laughed heartily and asked his comrades if they'd seen the protagonist's face. That was amazing. After all, he'd fallen for that little trick. What else could you expect from an idiot who couldn't use magic? The leader looked at Mashiro and added with a laugh, "It's funny that idiot misunderstood her, right?" The girl responded indignantly. He'd made her say those words. The guy laughed even louder and noticed, "That's right, it worked." Mashiro, nearly crying, asked them why they were doing this. Ryuk mockingly asked her if she was about to cry again. It was simple. He was enjoying the look of disappointment on the protagonist's face. "Let her call him again," Mashiro exclaimed in surprise. What was he talking about? The leader had told her that this time they would use magic to beat him. No matter how strong he was physically, he wouldn't be able to defeat magic. The girl told them it was wrong. She couldn't do something like that. They promised they wouldn't touch him if she said those words. She thought with frustration, if the rumors about the protagonist having no magical abilities were true, that was too bad. No matter how good he was at hand-to-hand combat, if he attracted the attention of these guys, they would never leave him alone. At least she did everything they said to keep the protagonist out of danger. But they would never keep their word to a commoner like her. Ordinary people are nothing to nobles. Even the students shouted at her, "What is she doing here? Let her get out of here." But the ogre was different. He handed her his handkerchief and asked her if she could stand up. The girl decided she would never betray him again. So she declared to Ryuk that she wouldn't do it. This time she would protect the protagonist. The leader grinned and asked, "What did she say? She's too brazen for a commoner." With these words, he struck the girl, sending her flying. The guy approached her, and in a wheedling voice told her to show him something remarkable about her figure. His hands reached for her, and Mashiro began to fight him off. No need to scream. At that moment, a kick blew the door open, and the protagonist and Chris burst into the room. Ryuk exclaimed in bewilderment and anger, "What is he even thinking?" Mashiro, with tears in her eyes, uttered the protagonist's name. MC answered her, "Well said. And now, no one will lay a finger on her." Ryuk exclaimed indignantly, "Why is he here? But anyway, didn't Mashiro just turn him down? Why did he come here?" The protagonist chuckled and remarked, "Did he really believe it? Did they really think he'd fall for this cheap show?" Ryuk thought angrily, had this idiot figured them out? But that look of frustration on his face, he'd make a good actor. A few minutes ago, the protagonist was sighing heavily, pondering this misunderstanding. Perhaps it had been a mistake to try to act tough. Should he change his approach? At that moment, Chris ran up to him and told him they had a problem. He had to see it. MC asked her, perplexed, what was going on. The girl showed him her device and told him to watch what she'd filmed with her magic camera. She showed him everything that happened in the abandoned building of the Magic Academy, where Ryuk and his comrades talked about the protagonist and Mashiro. The ogre thought in surprise, so Chris was right. The girl had been forced to say those words. Yesterday, she'd shown her true feelings when he'd handed her his handkerchief. Chris continued, "The girl is in trouble. She needs help." The protagonist thought happily. There was no misunderstanding between them. And now here he was, his broken heart safely mended. Ryuk's comrades told their leader that MC was scaring them. The boy angrily called them idiots and asked them what they needed magic for. He immediately activated the Spirit of Flame and summoned it to engulf his enemies. Instantly, a powerful magical force arose around Ryuk. Mashiro anxiously called out to the protagonist, warning them to be careful. Ryuk also summoned 12 fire arrows and aimed his attack at the protagonist. But Ogre, to the great amazement of his enemies, parried his attack and said with a smile, something like that. The leader, perplexed, asked, "What's wrong? Wasn't he hit? But how is that possible? He has no magical ability. Did he cheat somehow?" The protagonist chuckled and thought, "That's right. He doesn't have the gift of magic. So what else can he do?" The enemy shouted at him, "Here's another batch of 12 fire arrows." With these words, the leader activated his summoning. But MC responded by activating Divide and calling upon magic calming. He knew all he needed was to erase the magic at its source. Ryuk, realizing his magic had been dispelled, exclaimed in confusion, "How could this be? Why did this happen?" He fell to the floor in surprise. The protagonist asked him sarcastically, "He's stumped, isn't he?" He approached the enemy, grabbed him by the lapel of his jacket, clenched his fist for a punch, and said, "It will hurt, but it will be quick." The protagonist delivered a crushing blow to the face, and the enemy fell to the floor, briefly losing consciousness. MC wanted to hit him again, but said, "Well, he's not worth it." Mashiro, surprised, asked her savior what had happened. Had his magic disappeared? The ogre, putting his jacket on her, told her it was a delit skill. It deactivated magic under limited circumstances. He added that it was his own invention, and then asked the girl if she was injured. Mashiro, with tears in her eyes, apologized for the terrible words she had spoken. He had helped her, and she had treated him like this. The protagonist playfully frowned and said menacingly, "This is unforgivable. She will be punished." Then he smiled. wiped her tears with his handkerchief, and added that he wanted her to keep this a secret. And no more tears. It doesn't matter what they call her, commoner, incompetent, or whatever. To hell with them all. Let her follow him, and this will be her punishment. Mashiro, confused and unsure how to react to his words, nevertheless threw herself into his arms with words of gratitude and said, yes, she would follow him. The protagonist sarcastically thought, now this girl is in his hands too. He's one step closer to creating his own harem. His path to dominance begins here. After these words, he laughed and headed for the exit with the girls. Chris joyfully exclaimed, a laughing Mr. Ogre is also beautiful. Meanwhile, Raina, looking out the window and seeing the protagonist with the girls, thought in surprise, new students? This year promises to be interesting. After this incident, Ryuk was expelled from the academy along with his comrades. The protagonist thought, from now on he won't be associated with those idiots. Now he could focus on his usual morning activities. Chris, watching him exercise with weights, asked him if he wanted her to add weights. The protagonist answered affirmatively. The girl, fulfilling his request, noted that he was, as usual, in his element. She thought that all nobles focused on magic and didn't play sports. But he was special. MC, doing a handstand, thought it was just a guess. But in this world, most nobles have magical abilities. He had traveled from another world, and he didn't have any. Was that why he had received a stronger body, as if in compensation? If so, he'd have to train even harder. At that moment, Mashiro came to them, and seeing the protagonist, wished him a good morning in a stuttering voice. The protagonist thought, great, he forbade her to call him master, or address him formally. That's just what he needed. He'd always dreamed of a sweet childhood friend. To create this image, he forbade her from using any honorifics. As expected, he was a genius. After finishing his training, he told Chris that now that Mashiro had arrived, he asked her to look after her. He couldn't leave her alone after what happened. The girl told him she understood. Mashiro, surprised, asked him, isn't he coming? The protagonist, flexing his muscles and wiping away his sweat, told her someone had called him, and besides, he was sweating profusely after class. They'd see each other later. Both girls glanced shyly back at him and agreed. Sometime later, Ogre arrived at the faculty building, on the top floor, took a deep breath, and knocked on the office door. Hearing the invitation to enter, MC stepped inside. Florine Milfanti told him he was just in time, and thanked him for coming so early. The protagonist told her it was nothing, and thought that there wasn't a single person in this world who hadn't heard of the thunderous Florine, the heroine of many battles. Even now, after she had retired and taken the position of dean, she still radiated strength. The woman sitting near the aquarium smiled and told him to relax. She just wanted to thank him. The protagonist, confused, asked her, for what? The dean answered, for helping Mashiro. MC thought, perplexed. Thank you for Mashiro? The dean was thanking him, an ordinary student, for saving a commoner? What was the meaning of that? The woman asked him, and perhaps he noticed too? A person can only be born with one magical ability, but sometimes children with multiple abilities are born, like Mashiro. She's a multi-mage, mastering both wind and ice. As Veret's heir, he immediately noticed her potential and decided to keep an eye on her, right? The ogre was confused. He wondered, surprised, if this was true? This was the first time he'd heard of it. He'd saved her, only because of her form. How could he have missed such an important detail? Her power is truly astounding, but he answered the dean out loud. That's exactly it. Florin laughed and said, otherwise, her talent would have been nipped in the bud. Thank him. She thanked him on behalf of the academy. The woman added, classes were about to start. He should go so as not to be late. The protagonist, leaving the office, thought perplexedly. Strange. What did he do wrong? He successfully recruited Chris as a fighter, and Mashiro would soon be part of the harem. He was on the right path to evil. But why was he being thanked for it? What's going on? He's supposed to be the villain. At that moment, Florin, looking at the fish behind the glass, thought about the protagonist. He'd gotten into something he shouldn't have. She couldn't believe he'd taken Mashiro, whom she wanted to use in her experiments. She also knew who his maid really was. Somehow, this young man acquired a monster who rose to the rank of commander of the Holy Knights through swordsmanship alone, and a female multi-mage. But that's not all. According to Rourke, MC erased his spell. He even said that ogre magic negated his. What nonsense. That simply can't be true. What on earth is this ogre Veret planning? She didn't understand his true intentions, but this could become an obstacle to her long-held dream. She couldn't allow this. She swears by the name of the thunderous Florin. The woman asked Rain if she heard everything. The girl answered affirmatively. She added that the dean needn't worry and could entrust her with surveillance. Meanwhile, in class, Mashiro asked Chris if the protagonist was late. The girl answered that he was. Chris thought she had a bad feeling about this. Ryuk must have leaked the information about the protagonist's skill. At that moment, MC joined them and told the girls that he had returned. He had been thinking about the dean during class. She had called him into her office simply to thank him. Did she really think so highly of Mashiro's magic? He looked at the girl carefully. She, noticing his intense gaze, asked him if something was wrong. The ogre said, okay, grabbed Mashiro by the hand and pulled her toward the exit, ignoring the teacher's shout. Where are they going? The entire class looked at them in confusion. He told her they needed to take a walk. He wanted to check something. He told Chris to stay here. The protagonist led her to one of the buildings. The girl was surprised by how large the building was. What was it? The ogre told her it was the training hall. He continued. He was told she was a multi-mage. Was that true? He'd like to see her magic. Mashiro exclaimed in surprise. Yes, of course. Now he'll see how cool she is. The girl rushed inside, but was stopped by something that caused her to hit her head on the door. The girl gasped, and the protagonist asked her if she was okay. At that moment, Raina called out to them and told them that first years were not allowed in the training hall without an escort. The protagonist, helping Mashiro up, asked her who she was. Raina introduced herself and added that she was the student council president of the Magic Academy. She expressed hope that they would get along. MC wondered warily, was Raina Flornet's top student? Thanks to her exceptional talent and appearance, she earned the nickname God's favorite child and became famous beyond the academy. Strangely, she gave a different impression in the photo. Was it because of her empty, lifeless gaze? Although her assets were larger than in the photo. Raina blushed slightly and told the protagonist that she felt embarrassed when people stared at her like that. The protagonist thought as if he cared, but out loud, he answered her with an embarrassed expression. Please forgive me, he just couldn't help it. Raina used her fingers to spread a smile across his face and remarked, now that's better. He should smile when he says things like that. He can't forget to smile. Mashiro watched in surprise. The protagonist, looking at Raina, wondered in confusion what was wrong with her. The girl asked them, so, what are they doing here during class? The multi-mage hiccuped in fear and addressed MC by name. Ogre answered the student council president with a smile, saying that the lecture was too boring, so they decided to practice on their own. Raina drawled, I see. In that case, how about her lecture on skills? The protagonist looked at her in surprise. Mashiro exclaimed in confusion. A lecture from her? The protagonist thought, getting a master class from someone like her? This is a very rare opportunity that can't be bought for any amount of money. It could be very useful for developing the technique of magic calming. Everything is shaping up so well, so he readily answered her that he agreed. Raina said with a satisfied expression, well good. Except she didn't say it was free. In exchange, they both joined the student council. Mashiro whispered to the MC in surprise, an invitation to the student council? What should she tell them? The ogre understood. So that's what it was. It seemed strange. First the thunderous Florin, now her student. The fact that he met them on the same day couldn't be a coincidence. So it was a trap set by the teacher and student. Raina was pretending to be kind to lure him into a cage. But that was a foolish idea. Did she really think she could appease him? He, looking at her intently, told her he'd get by somehow. He wasn't going to follow her. Besides, follow her orders? She thought too much of herself. Raina asked him in confusion, is that his answer? The two opponents glared at each other. At that moment, Chris appeared, indignantly calling the protagonist's name. He thought he'd completely forgotten about her. The girl angrily pounded his chest with her fists and exclaimed, why did he leave her? The protagonist apologized, explaining that it had been an impulsive act. He needed to check on something. Chris, noticing Raina, asked in surprise, who is this? Raina, appraising the maid's figure, smiled and said, okay, she understands. Let him let her know if he changes his mind. She'll be waiting for him anytime. She left, and Ogre looked after her in confusion. What did she just say? A while later, when Raina returned to her room, she went to the mirror and noted with disappointment that it hadn't worked. She thought it was the most effective way to fool a man, but it was useless when he was surrounded by such people. Taking out her implants, she said irritably, okay, he outplayed her today, but she'll definitely catch him next time. Meanwhile, the protagonist was also pondering her. He wondered if Raina had backed down so easily. That was odd. Chris asked him what he meant when he said he'd acted impulsively. Ogre replied that the dean had told him Mashiro had several magical abilities. He wanted to ask her to demonstrate them, but the student council president interrupted them. Chris thoughtfully remarked, so they were looking for a place to practice? She exclaimed happily. Then they were in luck. She had just the perfect target in mind. She had a friend named Mio from her days as a knight. Now she runs an orphanage. Recently, they were attacked by a gang of thugs, and she was asked to help deal with them. Wouldn't this be the perfect place to test Mashiro's abilities? The protagonist thought excitedly. Saving the orphanage? That's quite good. There are tons of children there, and they're the future workforce. They will unconditionally believe everything their benefactor, meaning him, tells them. This will provide him with labor for the rest of his life. The protagonist praised Chris, who was delighted by the praise, and asked Mashiro what she thought about it. The girl enthusiastically exclaimed, yes, she wanted to try. MC concluded, then it was decided they would go to the shelter for the weekend. The girls responded happily to this decision. A couple of days later, the allies set off. Mashiro complained of motion sickness. Chris laid her down on her seat, and the girl thanked her for her concern. Ogre asked his assistant what she knew about the city. She replied that Inabent was a quiet town, unrelated to the capital. Everything had been peaceful there before. In fact, it was located next to the city of Ushuaia, where the arena was located. The protagonist knew that Ushuaia was an unsafe city with an underground arena, so that's where the troubles on Inabent originated. When the allies arrived, the protagonist looked around and noted with surprise that there was nothing special about this city. Why had the enemies chosen it? At that moment, the allies heard a woman's scream. The protagonist turned around and saw that a crowd of idiots had dropped a girl who had been begging them for mercy. Chris excitedly shouted at the protagonist, "It's Mio," he replied. "Okay, he'll handle it." MC charged into the crowd of bandits and began scattering them, dealing blow after blow. The bandits exclaimed in bewilderment. Who are they? Ogre thought. Really? They just arrived and immediately ran into them. What a lucky coincidence. He stood before them with superiority and asked with a smirk. Who is he? He would tell them. At that moment, Chris angrily shouted at the bandits. Who do they think they are? Let them not waste their time in vain. This man, Lord Ogre Verret, he dispels the darkness of this world, grants light, and punishes all evil, and yet he lives a righteous life. The bandits looked at him, confused and perplexed. The protagonist mentally addressed Chris and asked her to stop. He was ashamed. And these bandits, there was no awkward pause here either. He had nothing to do with it. It was all Chris's initiative. Let them not look at him like that. And even Mio, to whom they had come, took them for madmen. Or did she? Because the nurse, looking at him with trepidation, exclaimed in surprise, he's such a kind man. The ogre mentally exclaimed, yes, this is someone Chris knew. Moreover, this is a former holy knight and a saint. Yes, believers are so naive. The girls greeted each other joyfully. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The protagonist thought, okay, he's gotten distracted. Now's clearly not the time. The bandits rushed at him, shouting at them not to mess with them. The protagonist activated his rapture skill and stopped the bandits' attack with his bare hand. He told them it was nothing of the sort. He wasn't joking, and he was very sorry they had to witness this, referring to his skill. His tone became more vicious. But if they decided to play with him, he was completely fine with it. MC delivered a powerful punch to the leader, sending him flying a considerable distance away, and cursed foully. His comrades rushed at the ogre from all sides. He dealt them a good beating and then turned to Chris. The girl, replying that she understood, activated her skill, and releasing the ropes, quickly bound the bandits tightly. The protagonist shook his hands and declared, everything is fine now. Mio watched in delight. Mashiro continued to lie on the blanket, dazed from the rocking sensation. Sometime later, Mio brought her guests to the shelter, apologizing to them for the rather modest reception. She stated her name and added that she had consulted with Chris about the oppression and damage done to the orphanage, but she never imagined that a nobleman would come here. Mio looked at the protagonist with gratitude and added, Chris was right. He was a very sympathetic person. The protagonist, perplexed, asked his assistant what she had told her about him. Mashiro, meanwhile, continued to rest. At that moment, children rushed in, joyfully calling out to Mio and Chris. Ogre thought with a smile, here they are, his future minions. 10 people, that's not bad. They even remembered that Chris changed her name. It's a sign of good discipline. Well, they're just kids. He needs to show them who's at the top of the food chain from the start. MC turned to the children and told them his name. He added that he was the eldest son of the Verret family. Let them know that they already belong to him. He is here to protect them, so let them be grateful. The children looked at him in fear. The protagonist thought of Chris. That's how he should be introduced, not like her. What fearful expressions on their faces. But the children quickly recovered from his assertive address and indignantly began to tell him, what did he say? He looks so weak. What kind of rich kid is he? Like a real bourgeois, pretending to be an adult, even though he's still a child. The protagonist was dumbfounded by such treatment. Mio indignantly told the children to stop saying such things and acting like that. The girl turned to Ogre and apologized for the children. The protagonist realized these street kids didn't like nobles. Okay, he was an adult, right? If he got angry, he'd lose face. At that moment, Mio told the children, leading them out of the room, that they still had things to do and should play outside for now. Ogre thought, indeed they had things to do, and now they needed to focus on them. The allies approached the tied-up bandits. Chris angrily asked them why they were targeting the orphanage. The leader smirked and told her he wouldn't say that even under threat of death. The girl drew her sword, held it to his throat, and exclaimed, then let him die. The leader seemed to have changed. He shouted at her, he'll tell you everything. They were just doing what Alaban ordered them to. Chris chuckled. This guy was clearly familiar to her. The protagonist asked her if something was wrong. She told him everything was fine and sternly asked the leader, where is that idiot? The bandits started screaming for them to let them go, but meeting Chris's angry gaze, he told her everything. MC looked at his assistant in bewilderment, wondering what was wrong with her. She looked at her notes and exclaimed, it's done. Tomorrow they will strike their base. Mio enthusiastically thanked her. Then a saint turned to Ogre and asked about his reward. He looked surprised. A reward? Mio held out a few coins in her palm and said, please forgive me, but this is all she can give him. Let him take at least this. The protagonist answered her with dignity. He doesn't need this. Mio added, confused. But that's not it. If that's not enough, she'll find more. She has savings. She can even sell some things. The protagonist said emphatically, he told her he doesn't need this. The saint stared at him in confusion and thought, it really is rather impolite to give this modest silver to a member of the Verret family. What a stupid thing she'd done. At that moment, the children burst into the room again, exclaiming, the son of the rich! The money bags have returned. Now he'll receive the sword of truth and the blow of justice. Mio, horrified, shouted at the children to stop this outrage. She turned to the MC and, with tears in her eyes, began to beg him for forgiveness for these children. The protagonist grabbed the instigator, Leroy, lifted him to face level, and told him he was leaving him no choice. They might not like nobles, but all children love this. He tossed the boy into the air and caught him, causing the child to burst into laughter. The others joined in, asking the ogre to toss them into the air as well. Mio watched in amazement. The protagonist told her he didn't need a reward. Besides, how many of these children could she feed with just one silver coin? Leroy, meanwhile, was happily perched on his arm, with the other children happily clinging to him. The protagonist continued to tell Mio that if she didn't know what to do, she should cook dinner instead. The girl looked embarrassed, and the MC, to the children's approving laughter, winked at them and smiled. Chris smiled and asked, "Isn't Ogre wonderful? He's her master." The saint, blushing with embarrassment, agreed. "She's right. He's very good." She hadn't seen them so happy in a long time. Ever since the orphanage became a target, they've lived in fear every day. Sometime later, late in the evening, Ogre asked Chris, "So what did she want to talk about?" She replied, "It was about their gang leader, Alaban." The protagonist chuckled with interest and asked, "Does she know anything?" Chris looked at him gloomily and said, "He's a surviving fighter from the Ushua arena." The protagonist looked at her in confusion and asked, perplexed, "Does she mean that guy ran away from her back then?" She replied, "No, she killed everyone there." MC remarked, "So how could that be?" Chris said, "He must have been lucky. Depending on the battle schedule, they sometimes had days off. He wasn't in the arena that day. She thinks he wants to build a new arena. He has nowhere to go now, and besides, Inabint is outside the royal capital's control. She's never fought him, so she doesn't know what he's capable of." The girl looked at the pale ogre and worriedly asked him what was wrong. Confused, the protagonist wondered if they were the source of this problem. He remembered Mio's words about dinner and became even more confused. She was in this situation because of them, but she wanted to give them her last silver for it. He cursed and remarked, "How disgusting. The evil he strives for looks cool. Not disgusting. They'll get to work to fix everything." Ogre decisively told Chris that tomorrow they would destroy the Alaban gang. The girl readily and admiringly agreed with his decision. The protagonist added that they were resting today and preparing for tomorrow. He hoped, heading to his bed, that Mashiro would recover. She had slept all day. He lay down and was just about to fall asleep, but Mio quietly entered his room. He exclaimed in surprise. What was she doing here in the middle of the night? The girl sat down on his bed and shyly asked him if he could give her a little of his attention. The protagonist was stunned by this question. Then, composing himself, he more calmly asked her what she was doing. Mio, terribly embarrassed, said, "She knows it's an impolite request, but please, could he show her what love is? She doesn't know what it is." Tears welled up in her eyes. The girl continued, fiddling with her clothes in embarrassment and nervousness. A teacher should teach children what love is, but her parents abandoned her when she was very young. Since then, she'd lived without ever knowing love. How could she truly love and protect them? If she faked love, it would only make things worse. She begged him to show her mercy, to teach her love. The protagonist sat up in bed, placed his hands on her shoulders, and firmly refused. He told her not to throw away her maiden honor. She simply wanted a moment to escape her worries. He understood what she wanted, but he couldn't fulfill her request, because it wasn't in his plans. The protagonist continued. Right now she couldn't get an answer to her question, but she shouldn't worry. That time would come. She should just trust him. The girl, who had initially looked at him with embarrassment and confusion, blushed after his words and told him that she understood. When Mio left, he thought, well, okay. He was sure she'd calm down once they sorted everything out. At least, that's what he hoped. The next morning, he informed his allies that they were leaving and asked if they were ready. The girls responded with anticipation that they were. The protagonist asked Mashiro if she was okay. She replied that she was fine and apologized for bothering him. The protagonist suggested they move on to the plan. Unfolding a map of the area, he reminded them of their original objective. Destroying the Alaban gang was their quest, and the goal was to test Mashiro's abilities. He figured she was supposed to be part of a harem, not a combat unit. But how could he not take advantage of her talent as a multi-mage? MC continued. Their enemy was a small group of bandits and their boss. At first, they wouldn't interfere, just to see what Mashiro was capable of. They could start at any moment. He looked at Mashiro and asked her if she was really ready. The girl happily replied, "It's okay, she'll try her best." The protagonist looked at her with a smile and thought in surprise. This harmless girl really does possess magic, so much so that she even impressed Florin. Having a dual attribute mage nearby makes things even more fun. After a while, they arrived at the place. The protagonist said, "It's here." He looked at Chris and asked her if she knew what to do. The girl answered decisively, "Yes, let him trust her." She opened the door to the house where the bandits were. Everyone stared at her in bewilderment. Chris informed them in a somber voice that she'd been told they were part of a gang that was committing atrocities in Inabent, and their boss was named Alaban. That name isn't common here, but she seemed to recognize it. The bandits began to sneer. Do they have a girl here? In her place, they would have run home as quickly as possible. Or does she want to have some fun? She threw a bag at their feet and said, "Let them keep this. It's her gift." It was a bundle of tied-up bandits. At that moment, Alaban, loudly placing his mug of table, excitedly pronounced her full name. He added, "How funny. She came to play with him?" Chris, with Mashiro appearing next to her and the protagonist looming behind her, answered him, "No, she's here to destroy him, and she now has a new name." Alaban's henchman, freed from her bonds, exclaimed in irritation, "Only 3 children against them. Was she that stupid?" Mashiro stepped forward and activated her Frost Wind skill, directing an attack at the opponents. The bandits froze in place, covered in ice, They began screaming in panic, but their bodies were frozen, unable to move. Mashiro loudly told them to stand still. They couldn't escape her frost wind. MC thought in surprise, wow, ice magic is perfectly controlled by wind magic. By combining them, she significantly increased her attack power. It's all obvious. Ordinary bandits won't be able to stand against her. Mashiro turned to him and asked what he thought. Had she done it? Ogre replied, yes, she had exceeded all his expectations. With that kind of strength, she could have defeated Ryurk and the others herself, couldn't she? The girl looked at him, puzzled, and said, she never thought of that. At that moment, Aliban wanted to strike them. Ogre, shielding Mashiro, deftly dodged his attack. The leader grinned. He's no slouch, but how long can he maintain this speed? The protagonist thought he barely made it. This guy specializes in speed? That's kind of funny. He whispered to Mashiro, it's time to finish. Let her try to slow him down. Then he'll be able to hit him. The girl told him she understood. The ogre thought, he'll make a great punching bag. Now they're fighting together. He shouted at Mashiro to move forward, and together they lunged at the enemy. The girl shouted, Aliban, let him get it, and attacked him with her magic. But the leader managed to avoid her blow, instantly dodging. This surprised her. He appeared behind her and was about to attack, but she, noticing his presence, activated a frosty wind, freezing his body. Afterwards, Mashiro told him that he was very fast, but she could detect his presence by the wind. However, in its current form, the spell's effect would only last a second. She turned to the protagonist and asked him, but that's enough, right? He answered affirmatively and praised her. Then he leaped forward and kicked the leader, sending him flying away from them and crashing to the floor. Standing next to Mashiro in a fighting stance, the protagonist asked her if she was running out of strength. She replied that she could still continue. Chris, piling up the frozen bandits, looked at Mashiro and thought in surprise, that's impressive. Aliban, recovering from the blow, cursed and thought angrily, will he really be defeated by some kids? He was the most popular fighter in the Ushua arena, and he hadn't lost a single match. That was simply impossible. Suddenly, he spotted the vials of power-up potions and rushed toward them without wasting any time. Grabbing them, he quickly downed the contents. Before the astonished eyes of his allies, he began to swell so quickly that veins were visible all over his skin. Chris, perplexed, asked him what kind of stuff he'd just consumed. The leader, laughing a creepy laugh with delight, crushed the vial in his hands without even being injured. The protagonist, dumbfounded, wondered what had happened to him. The enemy threw the broken vial toward the protagonist. He dodged the throw, but it still grazed his cheek, leaving a scratch on his face. The girls, seeing their master injured, were surprised. Then Chris exclaimed in rage, Aliban scratched him? MC was surprised himself, wondering how this had happened. Chris was about to rush at the leader, screaming that she would kill him. Ogre stopped her, saying it wasn't that easy. Mashiro burst into tears next to him. He asked her in surprise why she was crying, but instead of answering, the girl cried even louder. The protagonist covered his ear and winced. It was so loud. Then he said, well, okay, time to get down to business. The protagonist rushed toward his opponent and began striking him with such force and speed that the entire trajectory of Aliban's spin from MC's blows was visible in the air, like swirling currents. Finally, having thrown his opponent onto the well, Ogre asked the girls, rubbing his shoulder, if they were satisfied now. Both Chris and Mashiro exclaimed in utter delight how awesome he was. Meanwhile, Aliban, recovering from the beating, remembered being declared the winner in the arena. He enjoyed fighting and had never lost before. His fists were unbeatable, but why had he been so bored lately? He coughed, and it dawned on him that he had lost. But then where was this feeling of euphoria coming from? Right. He wanted to fight someone stronger than him. The protagonist, noticing that he had come to his senses, asked him if they would continue. But suddenly, Aliban fell at his feet, his forehead touching the floor, and in a position of complete submission, he told him that he was amazed at his strength, and he was asking the protagonist to make him his subordinate. The MC thought in confusion, what? A male subordinate? That's all he needed. Chris addressed Aliban, calling him an idiot, and told him that the protagonist wouldn't take under his wing a scoundrel who planned to build an arena. An idea instantly formed in the protagonist's mind. He told the leader, fine, he'll be his subordinate. He'll let him build the arena, but only under his supervision. Chris exclaimed indignantly, what's he saying? Ogre replied that the Ushua arena system she was involved in was no good. Rampant human trafficking, dubious clientele, that's why she took it so hard. And all because the people who ran it were small fry. But what if it was him? He could build an arena that everyone would love. Chris looked at him in confusion. Aliban was also surprised by all this. The protagonist thought, actually, building a real arena is a great idea, Aliban. After all, it will bring in good money. He was only afraid that Chris would object, but he was sure that after his words, she would understand everything. What a genius he was. Chris was truly surprised by his actions. She was touched to think that her master was willing to cooperate with Aliban for her sake. How caring he was. The bandit leader, looking at MC with admiration, decided for himself that this man was not only strong, but also good. Chris joined Aliban, kneeling next to him. Without saying a word, they bowed to the protagonist at once and exclaimed in unison that they would follow him for the rest of their lives. MC told the girl that they would now leave without her. Sometime later, when they returned to the orphanage, Mio asked Chris in surprise, is this true? The girl answered with a smile, yes, they are safe now. The saint was shocked. She couldn't believe it. She was so grateful to them all. Thank goodness, they can continue living at the orphanage. Ogre approached Mio, who was crying with happiness, and said that he wants to talk to her about something. At that moment, the children appeared, and Leroy, seeing Mio in tears, indignantly shouted at the others. The rich kid made their sister cry. He knew it. He was a nobleman, which meant he was a vile aristocrat. A stunned Mio tried to stop the children. Leroy didn't stop, shouting at the protagonist. He's trying to extort money from their sister, even though he himself had said he wouldn't take the reward. Their sister is only good at cooking. She's not very good at anything else, so she has no money. Mio was ready to sink into the ground with shame. The protagonist, perplexed, remarked, "What's wrong with discipline?" The girl burst into tears and began to beg his forgiveness. She added, "He helped them so much, and now he's getting this in return. It's all because she raised them without knowing love." Leroy addressed him contemptuously, calling him an aristocrat, dumped everything he and the children had collected in front of him, and asked him, "Is that enough?" The bag contained children's toys, children's weapons, and other childish trifles. The boy exclaimed, "Nobles love treasures, don't they? This is everything they have." Mio, forgetting her tears, looked at the children in confusion. They cried out that they loved their sister. Leroy added that if he made their sister unhappy, he would never forgive him. Mio grabbed the boy and, with tears in her eyes, hugged him again, saying, "He's so stupid, he shouldn't worry. She's happy." Leroy shouted joyfully to the children. Did they hear his sister call him a fool? They exclaimed in surprise. What's wrong? They'd never heard her say that before. The children laughed and made fun of him. He was always like that. A commotion arose and the children began to cheer. Mio, looking at them, told the protagonist she seemed to understand. If this laughter and tears were love, then she had already experienced it. MC smiled at her and thought, excellent. Looking at how the children swarmed around Mio, he noted that everything was going well. The protagonist turned to the girls and told them it was time to return to the academy. Turning to Mio, he added, Mio and the children are coming with them too. From now on, they would live on Verrett's territory. Everyone was surprised by his decision and stared at him in amazement. He thought, yes, nothing has been forgotten. He came here for 2 reasons. The first was to test Mashiro's strength. The second was to secure a future workforce. Thus, Ogre continued his evil ways. Mio and the children received housing and an education from the Verrett family, and Alaban began gathering bandits who could fight in the arena. But he was the only one who thought so. The former bandit leader shouted from every corner that he would gift all the local villains to the holy heir of Verrett. Mio and the children made a statue in the protagonist's honor and erected it on their property, where they now lived. Mio tirelessly wished him and the children good health. When the protagonist, surprised, asked her where the statue came from, she nodded toward the children and told him they had made it. Chris also tirelessly served him, anticipating his slightest desire. Enjoying the tea she made, he thought, another step toward absolute evil. Sometime later, Karen proudly strode down the hallway of the Royal Magic Academy. All the girls began whispering admiringly about how beautiful she was. They greeted her, and Karen greeted them with a smile before passing by. The girls began admiring her again. She's a girl, but she looks so cool in a man's suit. What modesty for the Crown Prince's fiancée. Karen turned around and reciprocated their feelings, telling them they were beautiful ladies too. At that moment, someone exclaimed, "Here comes the heir to Duke Verrett." Hearing this, Karen retreated in panic so quickly that the students cried out in bewilderment. Where did she go? The girl hid behind a column, near which stood a vase of flowers. Panicked, she wondered what to do. She was the only child of one of the 4 great families, the fiancé of the Crown Prince of Arnia and the former fiancé of Ogre. The protagonist, passing by the column, thoughtfully asked Chris if she had noticed anyone. The girl answered him, perplexed. She sensed no ill intentions. He muttered, perhaps he imagined it. A month had passed since then. During that time, he and the girls had returned to school life. At that moment, Mashiro called out to them and wished them good morning. The protagonist, looking at her tight outfit, thought in confusion, were they making fun of him or something? The girl, noticing their astonished glances, said she'd already changed because she had magic practice and physical education today. Chris admiringly remarked, are these summer workout clothes? They look comfortable. MC thought he adored her, and this academy too. Out loud, he spoke to Mashiro about the magic practice. She shouldn't use ice magic and show off her full power. She asked him in surprise. Why? He answered, her magic is too strong. There will definitely be people who will try to get her. Mashiro said sadly, understood. But her family is poor. To repay them for their kindness, she needs to graduate with honors and get a good job. The protagonist told her not to worry about it. He would take care of her for the rest of his life. She looked at him, confused, and then said, it's unfair to say something like that suddenly. Karen, who had heard the entire conversation, wondered in disbelief. What's going on? Chris, laughing, told the protagonist, she thinks it's unfair too. Why is there always some pretty girl next to him? Karen thought, this is unbearable. She quietly emerged from her hiding place and, as if nothing had happened, wished everyone a good morning. MC calmly greeted her back. She thought, so what now? She jumped out without thinking. Ogre told her he didn't expect her to talk to him. Won't her father be angry? Karen gave a forced smile and said, She was just saying hello. After these words, she looked at Mashiro with interest. The multi-mage, noticing her intent gaze, asked her, "Is something wrong?" Karen decided then she would act like a member of the great Rebecca family. She took Mashiro's hand, pulled her closer and said, "She must be Mashiro, right?" The girl told her name and said it was very nice to meet her. The multi-mage let out a surprised breath. Karen added that not long ago, one of the Bombold family members had treated her rudely, and she should forgive him. He was from her faction. The protagonist thought, "I see. So she was worried about Mashiro? That's so typical of her." The girl assured Karen that everything was fine, and she shouldn't worry about it. After that, Karen turned to the protagonist, noting, by the way, that the student council president constantly mentioned him. Raina would be glad if he came over for a cup of tea. MC thought irritably, "Is this girl still trying to lure him into her council?" He answered out loud, "Since she calls her that, maybe she's a member of this council too?" Karen answered him with a smile. "That's right. She loves helping others." She took his hands and, looking into his eyes, asked him why he really shouldn't join. She would be so happy. Karen squeezed his hand and corrected herself. By happy, she meant the council president. Raina would be happy. MC pulled his hand back and gloomily noted that he'd already told Raina he wouldn't be joining the student council. Besides, she, Karen, was the crown prince's fiancée, and she should be doing things like that with her fiancé. Karen looked at him in confusion. It was a punch to the gut, but the girl quickly pulled herself together and answered him with a smile. He was right. Let him forgive her. It was all just old habit. She added, "Well then, she'll be going." Waving at him, Karen turned and walked away. The protagonist grinned as she left, telling her they'd see each other again. She pressed her hands to her cheeks, burning with shame, and thought irritably, what was she doing? Her gesture and her state were noticed by Chris and Mashiro. Then, Karen simply began stalking the protagonist. The next day, she met him in front of the school entrance and greeted him. The next day, she followed him to the library, pretending it was all a coincidence. On the third day, she approached him in the classroom and said, "They're in the same class. Can she sit with him?" On the fourth day, when he left the classroom, she asked him if he was going to the restroom. On the fifth day, Karen invited him to have lunch. Then, embarrassedly asking him to forget about it, she ran away from him. The protagonist was puzzled. What was all this? Why was she running into him so often? She hadn't done anything like this since the Crown Prince's arrival. Had something happened to her? After a while, seeing Chris wander off, he asked Mashiro where she was headed. The multi-mage answered him sheepishly, saying she'd use the dining room to show her something. The protagonist thought, "I see." They were getting along well. At that moment, he heard a familiar voice and, turning around, said, "Prince Arnya." Mashiro exclaimed in surprise, "Is that him?" The prince sat at the dinner table, surrounded by some girls who were simply swooning in his presence. Ogre remarked with bewilderment. He hadn't expected to see him in such company. He'd always thought he was dining with Karen. Mashiro asked him why. He told her because they were engaged. The multi-mage was surprised. "Is that true? But Karen always dresses in men's clothing. Why?" The protagonist said thoughtfully, "It can't be explained in a few words." He began his story. Karen is the only child in her family. The current head of the family had no other children besides her. However, in their family, only a man can succeed. As a desperate measure, her parents raised her as a boy. However, a year ago, the king decided to make her the bride of Prince Arnya. She has the blood of one of the 4 great families, making her a suitable candidate. But this was only his assumption. Karen had been trained for a very long time to behave like a man. After all that, she couldn't dress like a woman. Mashiro said in surprise, "That's terrible." Ogre added that the king had forced the engagement, but the prince wasn't interested in Karen. The multi-mage had guessed, so he allowed her to dress like a man? The protagonist said, "Most likely." And despite that, he gets along well with the other girls. At that moment, he saw the prince being spoon-fed by one of the beauties. Mashiro exclaimed, "What ignorance." The protagonist thought irritably, "What an idiot. This is clearly a harem. He still doesn't have one." Mashiro addressed the MC by name, and before he could turn around, she stuffed a candy into his mouth. He understood. She tried to imitate them. She sheepishly told him, it's just that she had a candy in her pocket. Ogre thought, food tastes better when fed by a beautiful girl. She never ceases to amaze him. She's sweet in every way. Mashiro said sheepishly. Of course, boys like having lots of girls around them. As if there's anything good about that. Mashiro looked at the protagonist and asked if he really dreamed of something like that too. The protagonist swallowed hard and didn't answer. At that moment, Chris approached them and brought a dish that greatly surprised Mashiro. She exclaimed, "What is this?" Chris answered with a laugh. "It's a hamburger. Ogre invented it." The multi-mage took a bite and was simply delighted with the delicious snack. Watching her, MC thought she looked scary when she was angry, so from now on, he better watch his mouth. Although, it was a little cute, like she was jealous. Could that really be true? Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, causing him to exclaim, "Yeah, he got it!" The girls stared at him in amazement, not understanding what he was talking about. He said, "That's why Karen's been hanging out with him so much lately. She wants to make the prince jealous, and that's why she's decided to get closer to him." He chuckled and remarked, "How interesting." The girls listened attentively. Rising from the table, he headed for the exit and muttered, Then he'll act too. Karen will see what he's capable of. He told Chris to grab his things. Mashiro thoughtfully told the girl that she thought it was something else. Chris agreed with her. Meanwhile, Karen was recalling events from 10 years ago. Back then, she'd run away from the ball her parents had thrown into the garden, sat down on the ground, and cried bitterly. That's where the protagonist found her. He approached her and noticed, there she is. Ogre asked her if her father had punished her again. She agreed with this and added that it was because she was a bad girl. The protagonist took her hand, helped her to her feet, and told her then to keep this. With these words, he gave her a hairpin. As he pinned it to her hair, he said that it occurred to him that it would look good with her beautiful hair. From now on, this hairpin would be by her side even when he was gone. So let her not cry. Ogre then helped stop her tears and became a true hero to her. Sometime later, her father angrily shouted at her, "Is this a joke? Ogre Verret has no magical abilities? If so, then their engagement is off. She should have nothing to do with him anymore." Sometime later, when they saw each other, the protagonist, seeing her, called out her name. He said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. How was she doing? And suddenly, surprised, he asked, "What's with her clothes?" She was dressed like a boy. Karen was so embarrassed by his question that she burst into tears and ran away from him. He tried to stop her, but she didn't listen. She was too weak to disobey her father, both when he broke off their engagement and when he forced her to act like a man. She had hurt Ogre, and nothing could be done about it. As much as she wanted to fix everything, she didn't think he would ever treat her the same way again. She wandered down the hallway, lost in her sad thoughts. Suddenly, the protagonist appeared before her, wished her good morning, and remarked that he had come here because he couldn't wait to see her again. She was simply dumbfounded by his words. MC added that she was more beautiful today than ever, shining like the sun. It was so wonderful to see her face in the morning. Could he meet her tomorrow too? The girl thought in confusion. Is this really true? Impossible. This can't be. Is this a dream? The protagonist walked closer to her and hugged her. Karen thought she must be dreaming. He asked her why she was silent. She looked so sweet. Ogre brought his face close to hers, looked deeply into her eyes, and said, "See you in class." After that, he left, and Karen felt like the floor had shifted beneath her feet. She thought in confusion, so this isn't a dream? The protagonist told Chris and Mashiro to follow him. The multimage asked him, perplexed, what he was planning. MC answered her, Karen is trying to make the crown prince jealous, but he won't let her use him, so in retaliation he'll get even closer to her. He loudly exclaimed, if he pretends to be serious, she'll have to back off. Otherwise, her reputation will suffer from being associated with him. He's not going to hold back. This battle will be his. The girls looked at him sadly, and then he took action. Every day, he greeted her and complimented her, saying she was a goddess, that she had beautiful hair, impossible to stop looking at it, a sweet smile, and such fair skin, like a snow fairy. The students began whispering that Ogre Verret was trying to hit on Karen. Everyone was talking about it. As for Karen, she didn't know what to think anymore. Blushing and embarrassed, she thought he was complimenting her, and so often. Did that mean he was in love with her? She needed to think carefully. Maybe spend their honeymoon in the flower city of Floriu? Or in the blessed garden of Lilyshire? She didn't want to live in a mansion. A small house for two would be enough. Although no, she wanted 5 children. At that moment, her butler addressed her, which greatly startled her. She was lost in her thoughts and hadn't expected his appearance. The man told her that in a few minutes there would be dinner with Prince Arnia, and she had to go. Karen seemed to have fallen from the clouds and sadly answered him, okay. A while later, when she went down to the dining hall, the prince reproachfully told her that she was late. The girl humbly apologized for this. He magnanimously said, fine, let her sit down. After waiting for Karen to sit down at the table, he told her that she would have to bring him more money. He thought 5 gold coins would be enough. She was indignant. Again? After all, she had just given him 5 gold coins. The prince answered without a trace of embarrassment. They've already been spent, that's why he's asking. His father was so stubborn, he was the crown prince, so why shouldn't she give him some money? His parents told him he needed to understand how ordinary people live. But this is so inconvenient. If she has run out of money, then let her ask her father for it. Karen looked at him in amazement and was about to object, but changed her mind. To her father, she was nothing more than the prince's fiancée, and their relationship was far from good. Begging him for money was a bad idea. If all this became known, she would be disgraced. She resignedly told the prince that of course she would do everything. Arnia chuckled, looking at her pained expression, and told her that he would be looking forward to seeing her next week. And by the way, he had something else to say to her. He didn't care that she wore men's clothes, so he remained silent. But for some reason, he always felt uncomfortable when he saw her. And recently, he realized what the reason was. It was her long red hair. She wanted to look like a man? Then why didn't she cut it? With these words, he left, and Karen looked after him in confusion. Touching the cutlery, she reflected that she hadn't known why she'd let her hair grow long. Perhaps, despite everything, she wanted to be an ordinary girl, wear a uniform, skirts, and spend time in pretty clothes. Remembering the protagonist's words from childhood, when he gave her a hair clip and said it would go beautifully with her hair, she picked up the knife and brought it to the lock. An image of MC flashed through her mind. She clutched her hair in her hands, and with tears in her eyes, she realized, No, she hadn't cut it because he'd complimented her hair. The knife fell from her hands. Karen burst into tears and impulsively called out the protagonist's name, begging him to help her. At that moment, Raina blocked the path of the protagonist and his assistants, asking him if he hadn't heard anything. Ogre said sarcastically, she ambushed him on his way home, addressing him familiarly, mangling his name. Since when had they been so close? Raina laughed, and the protagonist, noticing her true form, sarcastically remarked, he'd known it was fake. Raina, pretending not to understand, asked what he was talking about. The ogre chuckled. Was she pretending not to understand? The girl waved her hand and told him to forget about it, returning to their topic. She wanted to ask him about Karen. He had spoken to her today, hadn't he? When was the last time? The protagonist wondered how she knew that. They had talked before lunch. Raina chuckled and remarked how strange it was. There had been a student council meeting this afternoon, and Karen had missed it. That was very unusual, since she always warns about such things. It seemed something had happened to her. Looking at him playfully, she asked if he could help her find Karen. MC, of course, went with her. Along the way, she began coming up with various nicknames for him that sounded similar to his name. He pointed out that she didn't know how to do that. The girl exclaimed, then, if that's what he wants, she'll call him darling. He rudely told her that she wouldn't succeed. So why did she call him? Raina had already answered him seriously. Didn't he know how cruelly Arnia treated Karen? The protagonist was surprised. He wondered, perplexed, if she was probably referring to his lack of interest in his fiancée and his flirtatious behavior toward other girls. But calling it cruelty would be an exaggeration. Although, from a woman's point of view, it was probably cruel. So he answered her, yes, he knew that. Raina was surprised. He knew, and yet he decided to be on her side? So the rumors were true. Varret, the hero of justice. The protagonist asked irritably, what was she talking about? The girl continued thoughtfully, then, it would save time. Everything was indeed true. The prince extorted a huge sum of money from Karen. Using his position, he demanded unreasonable things and took pleasure in making her suffer. Karen endured all this alone. Ogre was simply dumbfounded by her words. Raina asked him if she understood correctly that he was on her side. She also despised the prince for what he did to Karen, so she was offering to sort this out together. Ogre thought in amazement. This was the first he'd heard of this, but that meant Karen hadn't been using him? So all this time, playing her, he'd made a terrible mistake? A jolt of electricity shot through him. She must have mistaken him for an attractive man in this situation. That was the last thing he needed. He'd misled Karen. His plans for the harem would collapse if the duke's daughter fell in love with him. He had to fix it immediately. He muttered out loud in confusion. Karen was enduring all this alone, right? He firmly told Raina to wait for him in the student council room. He'd bring Karen there. The protagonist simply knew where he needed to go. He entered her room, called her name, and asked her to come out. The girl didn't answer. The protagonist walked up to the closet, yanked the door open, and said, he knew she was here. Karen exclaimed in fear. Is it him? How did he find her here? MC, looking at her tear-stained face, replied, no surprise there. When she's feeling down, she always hides in the closet. The girl grinned and said, exactly. Without changing her position, remaining seated in the closet, she mused, you can't change a person. Even when she became an adult and learned to behave like an aristocrat, she remained the same as before, a crybaby who can't do anything. The ogre smiled, offered her his hand, and began to pull her out of the closet. Karen asked him to stop. She looked terrible now, and he shouldn't look at her. The protagonist replied, I don't care. He'd seen her whiny face so often that he was tired of it. But now, he should make her listen to him carefully. They would always remain childhood friends. That's how it was, and that's how it would always be. So she didn't have to pretend in front of him. Did she understand him? Karen stared at him, unsure of what to say. He thought, just like that, carefully, he would send her to his friend zone. That way, all his recent contacts with her would be considered the actions of a friend. Karen suddenly rushed to him and hugged him, telling him that she understood him. He thought, good, she must really have understood everything, and she hugged him in a friendly way. Hugging her back, he knew everything was okay now. Karen, continuing to hug him, remembered his words about how it had always been like this, and how it would always be, and thought they would never part. But everything wasn't okay. Ogre gently pushed her away and said that she seemed to have calmed down. The girl, smiling, told him that she had. The protagonist, smiling back, invited her to go. Suddenly, he grabbed her in his arms and jumped out the window. Karen screamed in terror, not understanding what was happening. He whispered to her to keep her voice down. Landing carefully, he continued. The president asked him to take her to the student council room, but no one should see them, so she should try to be quiet. He wondered inwardly what was wrong with her. Was she afraid of heights? Well, the important thing was that she kept quiet. When he carried her into Raina's office, the student council president told her she'd been waiting for her. Karen jumped from the protagonist's arms and sheepishly apologized to Raina for missing their council meeting without permission. She was ready to accept any punishment. Raina laughed and said, okay, that's enough. She accepts her apology. The girl added, now she'd like to discuss something else. She wanted to talk about what to do with Prince Arnia. Karen glanced sideways at the protagonist. He apologized to her for interfering in her personal life. He thought, but what should he do now? He would prefer for the prince to completely reform and for Karen to become his fiancée again. However, it was impossible to punish the crown prince the same way he did with Rourke. Suddenly, Raina exclaimed, she had an idea. What do they know about the dueling system at the academy? Ogre and Karen looked at her in surprise. A duel? She said that if both sides' claims conflicted, they could hold a duel in front of all the students to determine the winner's right. MC thought he understood now. He could fight the crown prince openly. Karen asked if she was asking her to fight the prince. Raina replied negatively. After that, Ogre said he would do it. Karen asked him, but it was too dangerous. Raina said she knew he would say that, but there was another rule in the duel system. The loser would have to do one thing for the winner, but would he agree to it anyway? MC responded positively and said he didn't mind. He would challenge Prince Arnia to a duel. Karen was embarrassed and thought he was doing it for her. Ogre thought he would never let Karen lose this comfortable position. Now he could break his spirit and force him to start a new life. What's more, he has a chance to beat that idiot. He'll kill two birds with one stone. Raina said that then everything is decided. She will get Prince Arnia's approval. Yes, she will tell you everything else later. For now they can go to their rooms. Karen felt sick. She leaned against MC and said, "Okay, what should she do? She's dizzy." Ogre told her that she was hopeless. She should hold on to him. Raina smiled and asked if they should go already. After they left, as night fell, Raina stood by the window. She laughed and thought, wow, MC, who would have thought that he would move the way she wants? Now she will be able to see that magic cancellation that Ryuk told the director about. She wonders how he will fight Prince Arnia, who has strong magical powers, and the most interesting thing was his clear gaze when he decided to take part in the duel. She didn't know why, but looking at those straightforward eyes full of justice, she really got excited. The next day, an announcement was posted that there would be a duel between Ogre and Arnia. Everyone was surprised. Wow, the prince versus MC? Ogre thought, really? She managed to make a poster? So, the crown prince's approval has already been received? Nearby, MC heard someone taking pictures with a camera. Mashiro asked, what? Why? He replied that they were from the newspaper club. She was Ogre's friend, wasn't she? Mashiro? Could they take a picture of her? Mashiro was surprised and asked them to stop. The photographer asked if they could take pictures of her from all sides. This is amazing. This is simply gorgeous. At that moment, Chris appeared next to her and angrily said that she had said they should stop. She held a dagger to the glasses of one of the photographers. The photographer frightenedly apologized to her. MC noticed them. They ran up to him, and Chris wished him good morning. Mashiro told Ogre that the student council president had secretly told her about Karen's circumstances. She couldn't believe something like that had happened. She apologized to MC for thinking ill of him. Chris said that he was actually just trying to save Karen. It was a deeply thought-out plan. Ogre thought he didn't quite understand what they were talking about, but it seemed the favorability towards him, which had dwindled at some point, had increased even more. That was very good. Mashiro happily said that she would root for him in the duel. Chris calmly replied that she would also do her best to support him. MC thanked them and said that he would tell them about his plans, just not here. After a while, Chris said that she understood, so he intended to defeat the prince to force him to change and treat Karen better. Ogre agreed with her. He thought he was calling it the birth of a new prince, a new game operation, Crown Prince. He thought it was a great name for an operation. Well, at least he thought so. Then someone knocked on the door. MC wondered who it was. At that moment, the prince walked into their room and greeted them. The girls were surprised by his appearance. Ogre approached him and wondered what he was doing in this old building. He told him, wow, it was Prince Arnia himself. He thanked him for agreeing to his proposal for a duel. The prince looked at MC and the next moment angrily kicked a chair and asked, what the hell kind of duel is this? How dare he treat him like this? He's unfit. Ogre asked, is he sure this is okay? Is he showing his true colors? The prince replied that it works both ways. He needs to see. He handed him a newspaper that said he wouldn't let anyone take her. A duel for Karen's heart, an interview with the crown prince. MC looked at it and asked in shock, what is this? The prince replied that simply accepting a challenge from trash would be too boring, right? That's why he used this woman to make everything more interesting. Now he's a hero of justice who sacrifices himself for his fiancée. He'll become even more popular with women. The match is the day after tomorrow, so he hurried to make arrangements. Ogre thought, this guy, he did all this in one night just to become more popular? How cunning of him. This guy really has a bad character. Maybe he can even turn a loss in his favor. After a while, the prince asked if it bothered him that he'd shown his true colors, but it wasn't really a problem. After all, after that, he looked at the girls. MC didn't let him finish and said that he understood, so that's his goal, but he wouldn't give them to him. The girls were both delighted and confused by his words. The prince asked, what? He seemed to value them very much. That was interesting. Stealing women belonging to others is what he loves most. Ogre thought he was just an idiot. Did he want to die? At that moment, the prince was approaching Chris. She wanted to intercept his hand and was already prepared. However, at that moment, MC got ahead of her and grabbed his hand. He said that he should stop. He shouldn't drag Chris and Mashiro into this. The prince laughed and said that he was being considerate. This time he would back off. But after the duel, they would be his. He was looking forward to it. After that, he left, and Ogre thought it was quite dangerous. What a jerk. He wanted to settle things peacefully. and he tried to throw himself on a nuclear bomb. Mishiro hugged MC and said that this man was very scary. She thanked him for covering for them. Chris said it was true. She was ready to swear even more loyalty to him. Ogre thought that even in this situation there were some positives. After that, he mentally thanked the crown prince. Chris asked, he was supposed to be the next ruler. Didn't the king teach him anything? MC said that seemed so. She said that he constantly skipped classes, and no one knew about his abilities and magical attributes. But even though the prince was spoiled, he was still a member of the royal family, which meant he should have inherited strong magic. Something needed to be done about it. Ogre agreed with her and said that now they should go with him. They approached the building, and Chris said that this was it. MC continued for her and answered, right, this is the training tower. Mishiro said, but first years are forbidden to enter. Ogre said that it was no problem. After that, he took out a key and opened the door. Mishiro asked in surprise, he has a key, but where did he get it from? MC replied that the president lent it to him last night. A while ago, Raina told Ogre that he should wait. There was something else. MC asked her what she meant. She replied that it was the key to the training tower. He could train there for the remaining 2 days before the duel, and besides, he and Mishiro were allowed to be absent from classes. Ogre asked her if she was sure it was okay to do this without permission. Raina asked him, without permission? What was he talking about? She was the student council president, the highest authority in the academy. MC said, well, they need to go ahead. It's time to get started. Mishiro looked from inside in surprise and said that this place was so big. Chris asked Ogre what they were going to do here. MC replied that they needed to come up with a way to defeat the mage without using delete. Mishiro replied that she understood him. Ogre said that all the students would be watching the duel, so they wouldn't be able to use it. He turned to Mishiro and said that's why he needed her help. First, could she create snow using ice magic? Mishiro answered affirmatively and then used ice magic. MC replied that it was excellent. Her magic was very beautiful. Mishiro thanked him for it. Ogre apologized and said that he had ultimately made them a bet in a duel, but they shouldn't worry. He would win and protect them. They could rest easy. After that, he took off his outerwear and said it was time for him to begin. Mishiro, seeing this, screamed in embarrassment. MC said he would practice meditation. Chris thought his muscles were in great shape. Mishiro, shocked, asked him, meditation? Ogre replied that until now he had been conducting research based on the assumption that the opponent's magic could be destroyed, so he had very little experience with magic compared to ordinary mages. Mishiro asked him because he gets rid of it almost immediately. MC responded positively and said, however, that if he couldn't use delete, he needed to fight while feeling the magic with his body. Mishiro told him to just not tell her that he was. She didn't have time to finish because Ogre interrupted her and said that he would be under snow magic for the next 2 days. His body needed to get used to it. Mishiro was surprised and asked him, what? He'd catch a cold. Chris laughed and said it would be fine. MC had been through worse training than this. Mishiro thought that was true. Even as a child, she had grown up practicing magic. Obviously, a lack of such experience would be a serious obstacle for a mage. But this training was too reckless. Would he be able to withstand it? However, this is precisely what made Ogre different from everyone else. After that, she responded positively and said that she promised to support him, so she would make it snow for 2 days. MC thanked her and said that he owed her. Mishiro pointed to the ice and said it would disappear in a few hours. She would recreate it when time ran out. Chris smiled and wished him well. They would wait for him on the second floor. For the rest of the time, Ogre sat under the snow and meditated. In this world, there are spirits that cannot be seen with the naked eye. These spirits have attributes, usually represented as follows: water, wind, fire, earth, lightning, light. When the appropriate mana is poured into this, it transforms it into energy and creates phenomena. This is called magic. But spirits that match his magical power do not exist. In other words, he has no aptitude for magic. When he says this, people might misunderstand and think he lacks mana. But he does. He has inherited the immense magical power of the Verret family. He believes that his magical power is like poison to spirits, but by infusing his mana into an opponent's spirit, he can cancel their spell. This is how delete works. Well, he can't use it in a duel, so he needs to think for a while. Simply put, a mage's main weapon should be their magic. The girls took care of him the whole time MC was training. The next day was afternoon. There was 1 day left in the duel. Ogre called out to Mishiro and said that the ice was about to disappear. Mishiro sleepily replied that she was already on her way. MC replied in the negative and said that she didn't need to create a new one. Mishiro asked him, what? She looked at him and thought, why didn't he even open his eyes this time? The duration of the ice depends on her concentration. 3 hours? 1 hour. Then how could he have guessed before her that the magic was about to disappear? Ogre replied that that was great. He understood everything. With this, he won't lose to any mage. The day of the duel. A spectator said, finally the day has come. Who do you think will emerge victorious? A friend asked him, is he serious? Of course it will be the crown prince. The spectator said he needed to take a look. Gordon Verret, head of the Verret family, MC's father. He said it couldn't be. It was Gordon Verret. Florin said he was already here. The head of the family looked at her and called her by name. Florin Milfonti, dean of the Richburg Academy of Magic, Raina's teacher. She laughed and said he hadn't changed a bit. He was still the same caring father, but his son had certainly achieved great success right after entering the academy. Depending on the winner's wishes, she might need his permission, which is why she called him here. However, he looked more like a parent present to observe classes. He replied that one could say that. She said there was still time before the duel began. They should wait a little. The waiting room. Ogre called Karen and asked what she was doing. She was sitting under the table shaking all over. She said, "But this is a duel against the Crown Prince. If he loses, he will definitely demand something indecent." MC told her that she needs to look here. Does she think he will lose? He thought, right, his demands are outrageous, but Karen sharply replied that this is not the case at all. However, because she did it abruptly, she hit her head on the table. Ogre told her that then she should calm down and sit down. After that, they sat on the couch. Karen looked at him and said that he was very calm, but how was he going to fight him? He can't use magic. MC replied that she shouldn't worry about that. He had prepared countermeasures. Karen looked at him and sheepishly answered yes. She said that she believed him. What would he demand of him if he won? Ogre thought, right? He hadn't thought about that yet. His goal is to get the prince to restore his relationship with Karen, but it would be strange if he simply told him that he needs to start over with Karen. MC said that he was leaving this right to her. Karen asked him in surprise, what? Ogre, despite her, thought that now, demonstrating that she was his childhood friend, she must be hoping that he was seriously attracted to her in principle. Karen tried to say something. However, MC interrupted her and said that she should tell him what she desired from the depths of her heart. Karen wondered what she desired. Could she really say it? But she had known about her desire for a long time. She just couldn't say it out loud. After that, she burst into tears and replied that she wanted to be with Ogre forever. However, before she could finish, MC interrupted her and said, that's right. He thought that she wanted to be with the prince forever. Nothing good. After that, he stood up and told her that she should just wait. Her wish would come true after the duel was over. The host shouted for it to begin. They were going to have a duel between two students. First-year student Arnia Londism versus first-year student Ogre Verret. The fight would be held according to the Richburg Academy system. The audience was divided between those who supported the prince and those who supported Ogre. The people who were rooting for the prince asked him to try harder, and those who were rooting for the MC shouted that he must beat that fool. He stole his bride. He must avenge him. Chris and Mashiro were shouting Ogre's name. Among those who supported the MC, there were also men. The prince saw this and asked if he was popular with the guys. Ogre looked away and replied that it was because he had angered them too much. He didn't need their support. The host said that they should put on their battle cloaks and gloves. The MC put on a white cloak, and the prince got a black one. The host asked them what was wrong. The prince said black didn't suit him. Ogre replied that he didn't like white. The prince asked if he wanted to swap. The MC replied positively. At that moment, the host said that this couldn't be done. This was a magical robe that would help determine the winner. The magic had already been cast, so nothing could be changed. So, are they ready? Then he announced the start of the duel. The prince said that the spirit of the earth must pierce his enemy. The audience was delighted with his actions. Ogre said that his magic was of the earth attribute. Did he miss on purpose? How careless of him. He replied that he hadn't shown his magic to anyone at the academy yet. It was just a greeting. The audience whispered, did he see that? It looks like the earth attribute. The MC thought that was to be expected of the crown prince. He had deliberately concealed his abilities. However, he had come up with an answer that could handle any type of magic. Come on, he must approach him. Arnia asked him if he hoped he was ready. The next great spell could reduce him to nothing. Ogre was a little surprised by his words. The prince said the spirit of the earth must gather all the power of the earth. He must summon stone shards to reduce his enemy to dust. MC thought about the long chant of a large-scale spell. The carefree pose, he completely focused on the spell, ignoring it. Was he kidding? Was this really happening? He was completely open. His whole life, he had faithfully followed the path of evil. His father asked him if he should rest today. Ogre denied it and said he had no aptitude for magic. He must overcome his weakness to avoid dishonoring the Verret family. He intended to become a great nobleman like him. To become a true villain, he meticulously studied magic, honed his combat techniques, and never once lost his strength. He would never yield to any opponent. Even now, he maintains this determination in his duel with the prince, and yet he feels like he can kill him with a single blow. The prince stood completely open to attack. MC expected a formidable opponent and felt disappointed. The prince laughed and said that his magic was so terrifying that he couldn't even move. Once the stones were collected, he could activate his technique, and until then, they could chat. Ogre wondered what kind of circus he was putting on here. The prince said that at least he had the courage to engage him in battle, and that was commendable. However, he hadn't yet shown his true strength. He continued to say something to him, but MC thought he could have killed him at least 3 times in that time. It looked like he wouldn't have to use the tactics he'd devised. This was very boring. Well, let him talk as much as he wants, then he will respond with a light slap, and that can be the end of it. The prince said that he has the magic of kings. Losers like him will never compare to him. Ogre said, so this is the result of his efforts? What? He can easily kill him without putting in any effort. The prince replied, kill him? In front of all the students and teachers? Does he see a squad of light magicians? These girls are his followers. Once he gets injured, a small mistake will happen, and he will not be able to save. MC answered in the negative and said, but really how boring he is. The prince asked him, What? Then he laughed and replied, by the way, it seems that this girl, Karen Rebetsenka, is his childhood friend? Ogre answered in the affirmative and asked, so what? The prince shouted at him that he is the boring one. He hangs out with his favorite crossdresser. He would refuse to even walk next to her. Well, she is convenient as a wallet, so he keeps her close. He should tell him what's valuable about this girl? MC recalled all the moments associated with Karen. Ogre got angry and asked, what's valuable? The prince said it was useless. He couldn't get close to him. The host said the prince had finished collecting mana. He used the skill Stone Rain. He shouted at him that he should get it. At that moment, he tried to attack MC. Mashiro shouted that this couldn't be. After that, the prince laughed, but he saw that Ogre dodged all his attacks. He asked, what? How did he dodge? It was Stone Rain. The prince thought they should wait. Are his eyes closed? MC said that his training wasn't in vain. He was looking not at his lousy magic, but at his mana. After that, Ogre approached the prince and struck him with his hand. The host said that MC deals the strongest blow. Ogre approached him and grabbed him from behind. He asked him, does he know he made her cry? He should get up. The duel has just begun. However, seeing the expression on the prince's face, the MC thought that this couldn't be happening. He had been holding back. He started shaking him and told him to wake up. Was he faking it? After that, he threw him back and thought, what? The host ran up to him and told him to stop. He couldn't fight anymore. Ogre said he couldn't give up so quickly. He had to watch. At that moment, the prince was lying face up. The audience, seeing this, said they would probably give up on him. Everyone began to agree with these words. The host told them to stop looking at the royal dignity. In short, Ogre Verret won. The MC thought in surprise. What? 23 minutes after it started, the duel between the prince and Ogre came to an end. The MC was disappointed by the prince's weakness, but he still believed he had achieved his goal. To force the prince to start over with Karen. By cutting off her route, he would be able to create the long-awaited harem. The host said that the winner's request to the loser had been changed from Ogre to Karen. She should go up on stage. Ogre looked at her and thought, right, Karen should say that she wants to start over with the prince. He's counting on her. At that moment, Karen looked at the MC with love in her eyes. She said that she was addressing the prince of the Lundism kingdom, Arnia Lundism. Then she asked him to call off their engagement, and she wanted permission to be engaged to Ogre. At that moment, everyone who heard her was shocked by her words. The MC asked her what she was doing. After that, his father and Florn from the university approached him. They said that they congratulated him. MC told his father that he was here, so there must be some kind of mistake. His father asked him if it was a mistake. Ogre answered positively. Florn said so, but right after the duel began, she approached Karen to find out their request, and received permission from both sides. From her point of view, his victory was guaranteed in any case. He should see. This permission is from Duke Gordon and Duke Rebetsenka, as well as from the king. MC thought that Karen's father also gave his consent, but why? Do they even have the king's signature? Does that mean he's officially engaged to Karen, with the king's approval? Anyhow, what about his harem plan? 3 hours later in the infirmary, Ogre lay on the bed and thought that he didn't expect Karen to say something like that. What was she thinking? Then he opened his eyes and saw Karen in front of him. She asked him if he was awake. He sat up and answered positively. It was terrible. She asked him if he was feeling unwell. MC saw her and was speechless. MC wondered what was going on here. Why were Karen's breasts so bouncy? Karen asked him if he was interested in her shape. MC asked again, shape? Then, he answered positively. She said that her father came to watch the duel. He reluctantly agreed to her request at that moment. Her father said that he would no longer interfere in her life. She could do as she wanted. Karen said that he completely gave up on her, but wearing men's clothes and other things completely disappeared. Now she decided to wear what she liked. How does she look? Ogre was embarrassed and replied that he thought it suited her. After that, he answered negatively and said that that is not what is important now. The engagement announcements. What was that? Karen was surprised, and then said that the time she said she wanted to be together with Ogre, he answered positively. Ogre wondered in surprise. What did he say? What is going on? Karen sat down next to him and told him to listen. There was something she wanted to ask. She wanted to be his wife, and she would do everything she could. So should he get engaged to her? Ogre called her name. Karen told him that she was very emotional and had special strengths, but just like he had saved her, this time, she wanted to be the one who supported him. Ogre thought, an engagement to Karen? This shouldn't happen. He was dreaming of a harem. Now that he thought about it, isn't Karen a very cute girl? After that, MC was overcome by a stream of thoughts. A dream harem. His childhood friend turned out to be a girl with big breasts. Cross-dressing? She hid the fact that she had big breasts. After that, he answered positively and said that they could. She was delighted and said that she was very happy. After that, she thanked him. Ogre thought that he would think about his harem plan some more. Another day. After that, they hugged. The next moment, Karen called him and reached out to kiss him. However, it didn't happen, as Mashiro burst in. Mashiro asked her if she could talk to her for a moment. After that, they left the room. Mashiro turned to MC and said he was an idiot. Ogre, frightened, wondered what he had done. Karen asked her what was wrong. Mashiro sheepishly congratulated her on her engagement. Karen thanked her. After that, Mashiro said, but nothing has been decided yet. From now on, they will be rivals. Karen thought, as she thought, this girl also likes MC. What should she do with this cute girl with big breasts as a rival? It seems that one engagement is not enough. What should she do? Not to mention that they are apparently experts in magic. Karen said it was magic, suggesting Ogre hadn't trained much against mages, yet he perfectly dodged both magic and the prince. So that's it. She remembered MC saying he'd prepared a measure. Karen said with a smile that it must be thanks to her. Afterwards, she thanked her. Mashiro was delighted, embarrassed, and thought she was really cool. Afterwards, she asked her if she needed to wait. Was that sarcasm? Karen apologized and said she didn't mean it, and asked if she should stop them. Afterwards, she thought, in any case, Ogre had successfully demonstrated his greatness. Karen was also saved. The case was closed. Chris thought it was the crown prince. She wondered what the king was doing now. Londism Castle. Gordon and Florence stood before the king. The king said the outcome of the duel was the cancellation of the engagement between Arnya and Karen Rebetsenka and the renewal of the engagement with MC. Gordon responded positively and said that this was the result of the duel. Embard Londism, the king of the Londism kingdom, Arnya's father. Embard smiled and said that this was good. Then he gave his approval. Gordon responded positively. Then Embard said that he was surprised that they managed to convince Ange. Florence said that he was stricter about the rules than anyone else. That's all. Embard laughed and said that he was sorry for the trouble his son caused her. She replied that he should say that more often. His boy doesn't even go to class. Embard said that he thought that if he gave him the same experience as the other students, he could correct his arrogance, but he was too naive. Then he said that he treated Chris poorly. She was an excellent commander of their holy knights. She has a very straightforward sense of justice, but she had a hard time dealing with the current perverted nobility. He had to exile her for her own good. It must have been difficult. Gordon said that, with all due respect, he shouldn't worry about it. She was doing well now with Ogre, who shared her aspirations. Embard, hearing this, laughed and responded positively. He said the two of them could go. Then he called Gordon and said he had to take care of Chris and the Rebetsenka family. Gordon answered affirmatively. As night fell, Florence stood by the window, thinking they'd given her a good beating. The bond with the Duke's family, which had already begun to crumble, had suddenly strengthened again. Normally, the Rebetsenka family would never have agreed to such an engagement. However, by involving the crown prince, they gained the royal family's approval, adding another influential figure to MC's ranks. She then clenched her fist and asked, "Are you awake?" Raina answered affirmatively. Florin then glared at her, then slapped her across the face. She told her she was a fool. It was all because she'd suggested a duel. She was only causing harm. A useless idiot. Raina apologized and said she thought he'd reveal his magic cancellation during a battle with a member of the royal family. Florence said she shouldn't make excuses. Then she kicked her right in the stomach. She said it didn't matter. The Magic Academy competition was about to start. Richberg, the dean of the academy, was at the competition. She told Raina that this time she should try to get him on her side, and if she failed, she understood what would happen, right? Raina, battered and covered in blood, answered positively and said that she would do as she wanted. Florin thought that her expression hadn't changed at all. She was very creepy, despite being her student. Then she said that she thought this meant that she had completely become her puppet. She thought that now the fun would begin. The next morning, her classmates were talking about Ogre. Someone said he was incredible. Did he remember his honor strike? It was amazing. She said that she heard that he recently saved an orphanage. MC is a saint. At that moment, Ogre walked down the hallway and asked, "What is that? It's so noisy here." Mashiro said it was because he was so cool yesterday. Chris told him that everyone was talking about him. MC thought, really? They're probably talking about how he had the nerve to publicly punch the crown prince and challenge the royal family. That's very good. Let his bad reputation spread far and wide. At that moment, Karen approached them and wished them good morning. She asked them if she could join them. Ogre looked at her and wished her good morning. He thought that this company had become even more extravagant. He answered her positively and said that after all, she was his fiancée. At that moment, Satya was watching him from around the corner. She, like a true fan, secretly watched him and said that he was the epitome of elegance. She said that her name was Shulta Satya. She was the president of MC's unofficial fan club. What? They had never heard of such a club? It's natural, because they keep a low profile and don't attract attention. In the recent duel, he demonstrated the unwavering power of love. He's a very brave man. Is there a girl in this world who wouldn't be captivated by his love? Of course, that can't be. Satya asked the girls if they understood everything. They answered positively. She said that their fan club motto is that they shouldn't interfere, they shouldn't cause trouble, and they should stay out of sight. They will support Ogre today, keeping in mind the rules. The girls answered positively. Satya put on her invisibility sunglasses. MC looked in her direction and asked if there was anyone nearby. Chris replied that she didn't sense any killing intent. Ogre said, "Really?" At that moment, Raina wished him good morning. She asked him, "What's wrong? Shouldn't he be happier?" MC answered negatively. Raina said that they had some time before class. They should talk. Ogre asked her in surprise, "Shall we talk?" He thought she had already helped him before, so he thought they could talk. He agreed with her and said, just for a little while. He told Chris to escort Mashiro and Karen to the classroom. Chris agreed with him. The girls started to leave and said they would see each other in class. MC asked Raina what she wanted. She said she wanted him to join the student council. Ogre sighed and asked irritably, "Is this happening again?" She was being very persistent. Raina responded positively and said she would persuade him until he joined. MC thought, damn, he's been singled out by an unpleasant person, and he thinks it's pretty serious. She's looking at him like he's her prey. Raina said he shouldn't be so tense, he should drink black tea. She handed him a cup of tea. Ogre looked at it and thought she wouldn't put anything in it while they were in public. Would she? Then he tried the tea. MC was surprised and said it was delicious. He thought it was amazing. The Verrett family is also known for their exceptional tea-making skills, but her brewing method is just perfect. From the selection of tea leaves to the brewing process. Raina asked him with a smile, did he like it? If he joined the student council, she would brew it for him every day. Ogre thought he was almost caught. He can't show his weakness. He answered negatively and said that he already told him that he won't become her subordinate. Raina said that, besides, he will have more time to spend with his beloved Karen. Now it's just the two of them, and she's having a hard time. MC said that she shouldn't worry about it, and then he asked her, what? Just the two of them? Raina answered positively and asked him, didn't he know? The student council members are appointed by her teacher. There are only two of them now, so every day is very difficult. Ogre looked at the documents and said, are these documents also the dean's job? Raina answered positively. MC asked her, what do you mean? Raina replied that she was much more capable. He said that this shouldn't be the student's job. Raina calmly replied that the teacher was very busy, and it would be okay if she did it for her. Ogre wondered what it was. He suddenly felt something tighten in his chest. At that moment, he remembered his past life. A classmate told him that it was very late. He had a lot to do today. MC replied that he could finish it for him. The classmate asked him, is he serious? After that, he thanked him. But another classmate asked him if he could finish it for him. The classmate approached him and said she wants it too. Ogre awkwardly agreed to help them. He thought that he hadn't been getting enough sleep lately, but everyone was so busy. Everything would be fine if he did this for them. At that moment, the MC overheard the conversation. A classmate laughed and said that he would do anything for him. It was very convenient. Thanks to him, they had a lot of free time. They should go for a drink. At that moment, Ogre came to his senses and thought, what is this? Damn, she made him remember that unpleasant experience, but now he understands. She is the same as he was back then. Now he can say it with all confidence. Work sucks. Maybe she just calls her because they have few people? Does she have bags under her eyes? The MC then stood up and said that he was leaving. Raina laughed and said that he couldn't completely hide his emotions. He is a very kind guy. After that, she began to erase the drawn bags under her eyes. She can't believe he felt sorry for those fake bags under her eyes. It is a very charming quality, although she doesn't have the structure that contributes to the bags under her eyes. Satya asked them if they'd seen it. The girls answered positively. Satya said Ogre was very handsome while he sang black tea. She also overheard their conversations completely by accident. The MC was being invited to the student council. At that moment, she imagined Ogre telling her she should stop, her ribbon coming undone. She was so hopeless, she should come see him later to write an explanatory note. At that moment, Satya thought it was fantastic. After that, her imagination made her nose bleed. After a while, MC returned. Mashiro and Karen greeted Ogre. Karen asked him what the president wanted from him. The MC said she was inviting him to join the student council again. He asked her if the council was really that busy. Karen answered positively with a smile and said that, after all, there were only two of them. She's just an assistant, so it's not difficult, but the president has a lot of work. Sometimes she wonders if she even sleeps. After that, Karen excitedly asked him if he really wanted to join too. Then they could be together all day long. Ogre replied negatively and said that wasn't what he meant. At that moment, Mashiro asked, together all the time? Then she would join along with them. The president had already invited her. MC thought they should stop. Was this another trick of the student council presidents? Well, if it had come to this, did he really have no choice but to join the student council? At that moment, Karen and Mashiro simultaneously said that they should join the student council together. Ogre apologized to them and said he wasn't going to become a permanent member of the student council. The girls asked him, both disappointed and confused, what? MC thought he'd never join the council here. They made him work so hard, as if it were a black company. Even if he were tempted by a pair of breasts, he was so sorry. At that moment, Florin called Ogre and said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Could he please spare some time for her? MC said, so she taught Raina how to ambush him? Florin asked him, did she do that too? It wouldn't be long. They needed to talk in that empty classroom. After that, they went into the empty classroom. Karen said they'd go then. Ogre said they didn't have to leave. The girls agreed with him. MC thought he didn't want to be alone with Raina's mentor. Florin asked if Raina's offer still stood. Then she'd like to ask him too. She thought she would try to make a move. But Ogre asked why she wanted him to join the student council. She answered, because she thought highly of his skills. MC said he didn't see much point in joining the student council. Florin agreed with him and said he was right. Then she would reward him. Of course, it was a reward worthy of the heir of the Verret family. So what was his answer? Ogre thought how she irritated him. This was a form of pressure and an attempt to boss him around, just like his boss from his past life. She was making her work too much. She asked him what was wrong. MC replied, "How about giving the president a little more freedom?" The dean asked him what. Ogre thought he was the same as her. He did as he was told, forgetting his ego, as if. MC said she was like a lifeless puppet. Hearing these words, Florin became angry and asked him what he just said. Ogre, with a smirk on his face, asked her if he had offended her in any way. She asked him what made him think that. That was all for today. They should get ready for the next lesson. They agreed with her. Then they all left the classroom together. Karen asked him in surprise, did he scold the dean? She had been thinking about this for a long time too. Mashiro said that she was really angry. Karen excitedly said that she couldn't believe he said everything to her face. Mashiro also excitedly said that it was amazing. MC replied that it was nothing special. The girls whispered among themselves and asked, could the master have done otherwise? Ogre, although he tried to keep a straight face, was very excited and thought, wow, this is such a deadly force. He couldn't squeeze out anything but a grin. Does the student council president really have to put up with this all the time? At that moment, Florin was still in the empty room. She slammed her fist on the table and thought, this is the Verret brat. He really knows about Raina and her puppet? She must be smart. Surely he couldn't have accidentally said that word out loud. How far had he gone in his investigation? Well, no matter. If the plan was carried out, nothing would stop her. After a while, MC and the girls were walking down the hallway. She asked him if it was true he wasn't planning on joining the student council. Karen replied that it would anger the dean. Ogre thought they should wait. From what he'd learned today, it was obvious Raina was simply too absorbed in her work. Wasn't that outrageous waste? She was a genius in magic, described as a child beloved by God. And while she may not be curvy, she had beautiful legs. Such wealth shouldn't go to waste. And it's all Florin's fault. He called Mashiro and said that they should join the student council. Mashiro asked him in surprise, what? MC thought that the decision had been made. He would join the council that day after all, to drag Raina out of there and make her his pawn. He would be the one above her, not she above him. Mashiro answered positively. Ogre told Chris that she should take them to the dorm. Chris answered positively. MC thought that since he had decided to do this, there was only one thing left to do. After a while, someone knocked on Raina's office. She said that he could come in. She called Ogre by name. MC called her and asked how about staying in his room tonight. Raina didn't expect such an offer from him and was very surprised. Ogre asked her how about staying in his room tonight? Raina asked him, did she hear him right? MC apologized and said he was getting ahead of himself. He and Mashiro had decided to join the student council. Raina asked him if it was true. But why? Ogre replied that they thought it would be good for them too. Raina wondered if he had been so reluctant to join before. Did he really feel sorry for her? She remembered MC telling her that he had already told her he wouldn't obey. Raina thought that at least the teacher wouldn't hit her now. That would be good. After that, she thanked Ogre. MC asked her that, going back to that conversation, could she stay in his room for the night? Raina asked him, surprised, what the hell he was talking about again. Ogre said that it was because he wanted her, and he was always used to getting what he wanted. Raina was very shocked by his words. MC asked her if she would come to his place tonight. Raina hesitantly responded yes and said she would come. Ogre laughed and thanked her. He said he would wait for her. After that, he left the room. Raina could barely stand. She wondered what that meant. Did she think he was only interested in girls with large breasts? Maybe he had become so oversaturated with them that he had started to be interested in small breasts? No. Now was not the time to speculate about his perverted inclinations. She didn't know how to react to this, so she automatically responded yes. She remembered how he said it was because he wanted her. She thought, so he meant doing that very thing? Okay, if that's what it took to get him, then she had no right to feel sorry for her. MC thought he had sorted out the invitation. Now all that remained was to do what he had already discussed with Mashiro. One day during lunch, Mashiro told Karen that she was now free. Why shouldn't they celebrate? Karen asked her if they should celebrate. Chris said it sounded nice. She was finally Ogre's fiancée again. Karen said that in any case, she'd like to get to know Mashiro better. Mashiro was touched and asked her, really? In that case, she'd show her a friendly tradition among the common people. They, the aristocrats, would definitely like it. That's what it's called. Chris greeted the MC. Ogre responded positively. He thought that now was the perfect time. It would help her get into the swing of things. They were waiting for her at their sweet party. After a while, Raina walked down the hallway. She thought, here she is. These clothes aren't too daring. No, it's too late to be shy now. After all, soon she'll be in his arms. But what should she do with it? Would he be able to accept it? And yet, if he could accept even this, then maybe he could save her from that monster? As she passed the door, she turned away and thought that she shouldn't be naive. She'd better go back. At that moment, she heard sounds outside the door. She asked, what's that? The sounds coming from behind the door sounded like someone making love to the MC. Raina, hearing this, was very surprised. She thought it really happened. Raina thought that not only Karen and Mashiro, but also Chris, his maid. No way. This is unacceptable. As the student council president, she has to clean up the mess. At that moment, she burst into the room and told Ogre that this kind of thing is not allowed in the academy. Confetti rained down on her, and everyone cheered her on to the pajama party. The MC apologized to her and said that they could be heard even in the hallway. They were too carried away with the firecrackers he designed. Raina stood there shocked and asked, "So this is a slumber party?" Ogre replied positively and said that since they were going to join the student council, it would be a great way to get to know each other better, right? Raina thought, how about staying in his room tonight? So that's what he meant. After that, she covered her face with her hands and collapsed on the floor. Mashiro asked her if she was okay. Raina answered positively and said that she shouldn't worry. She thought everything here was surprisingly decent. She mentally apologized to MC and thought she was imagining all this obscenity. Mashiro took her hand and asked her if she remembered their first meeting. She thanked her for inviting a commoner to join the student council, and she was glad that she decided to join them today. Now they should have fun together. Raina answered positively and said that sometimes they need to relax. After a while, Raina said, "So Karen's hairpin was a gift from Ogre?" Karen replied in the affirmative. Mashiro said, "As for her, he gave her this." She handed her something. Karen said, "It's a handkerchief with the Verrett family crest. It's so cool. It's MC's favorite handkerchief." Mashiro asked if that was true. The maid uniform was also specially ordered by Ogre. Chris answered positively and said that it was made in such a color so that traces of blood would not be visible. Karen asked, "Blood?" Raina laughed and said that Chris is an interesting person, isn't he? Karen told her that she says that about everyone. MC thought that the pajama party was going like clockwork. Once Raina gets to know the girls, she will naturally open up to him. He is just a genius. At that moment, Mashiro said, "By the way, what will they do in the student council?" Raina put the drink on the table and said that she will explain everything now. She wanted to invite Ogre and Mashiro to the student council because the Magic Academy tournament would be held soon. MC thought that the Magic Academy tournament was a competition in which the 9 Magic Academies of the Embarred Kingdom participate. It's held among student council members in groups of 3, the largest combat magic tournament in the country. Ogre asked if this was the one Richburg won every year but lost last year. She participated in that, right? Raina answered yes. Karen said her family was in charge of military affairs, so she watched the tournament. Raina did well. She was only a rookie back then, but after 2 of her comrades fell, she fought 3 single-handedly and almost won. Raina replied that they still lost in the end. Until now, they couldn't find anyone strong enough to compete in the next tournament, but these 2. Mashiro wields 2 types of elemental magic, wind, or yes, a master of dual casting, and would be unmatched in a duel with ordinary students. MC managed to defeat Prince Arnya, and all because he uses cunning tactics that allow him to confuse his opponent. Ogre thought he understood now. So that's what she was really after, a persistent recruiter. Raina looked at them and asked what they thought. Would they fight alongside her? MC said, so that's it. She should have told him from the start. Mashiro answered positively and said she wanted to test her strength too. Raina was both happy and embarrassed. Ogre thought it sounded fun. This tournament would show the whole world how great he was. Raina said it was decided then. The 3 of them would participate in the tournament. MC and Mashiro simultaneously answered positively. Raina held a piece of paper in her hand with the following written on it. Magic Academy Tournament. List of participants from the Royal Academy and Richburg Magic. Raina Milfanti, Mashiro Rice, Ogre Verrett. Later, Karen and Mashiro fell asleep together. Ogre looked at them and said that they were so restless. He called Chris and said that she should take care of extra blankets. He turned around and asked, she still doesn't want to sleep? Raina asked with a puzzled look, is something wrong? He sat down on the sofa and said that from now on she can call him by his name, and he will also call her by her name. She was probably tired. She should sit down. She sat down next to him, called him by name, laughed, and said that she looked a little embarrassed. He asked in a calm tone, does she really think so? She rested her head on his shoulder, took his hand, and he wondered, is this really what they call a pleasant atmosphere? She thought no, it was beyond her competence. She should not lose concentration. She said that he was a very kind person. He turned to her and asked, what's wrong with her? She looked down and said that Rice, Lady Rebecca's shelter, he saved them all. She needs to apologize for something. She asks for forgiveness. Those circles under her eyes were fake. Her condition is not that weak. She tried to take advantage of his kindness. He looked at her and asked what it meant. She said that if he saw, he would understand. She began to unbutton her t-shirt and ask if he could look at her secret. He began to get nervous about this and wondered if she was really offering to look at her body herself. If she was offering so generously, then he would look. He calmed down, agreed, and said that she could show. She continued to slowly unbutton her shirt, but a strong wind blew through the window, and because of this, a vase fell to the floor. The girls woke up because of this, and Mashiro said that he should not move. She would clean everything up now. He, looking a little upset, apologized and thought that he wanted to look. Raina got up from the couch, called his name and asked, her clothes are wet. Could she use the restroom? The protagonist agreed and said that it was next to Chris's room. She went there, and he found it strange and wondered if she was really capable of such a thing. By the way, why did she call it a secret? She went to the mirror in the restroom and wondered what she was even doing. It's good that she came to her senses in time. He is kind, but will he accept her like this? She remembered how, as a child, she ran through a burning city and loudly called for her parents. She fell to the ground. Florin came up to her and asked if she was that girl. She should go after her. Later, she brought her to the basement, where children were suffering greatly from pain. She approached the girl, who was complaining of pain, realized that it was a failure, and eliminated it with the help of magic. She approached Raina and said that she hoped that at least she would be useful. She grabbed her hand and started to lead her away, but she was very scared because of what happened. After the operation, the dean asked if she survived despite the device being implanted. Then she had to continue. The other children were eliminated, and she thought that she had to make sure that she wouldn't be thrown away. To do this, she had to pretend that she didn't feel pain and didn't see the children being thrown away. In this way, she lost everything, body and soul. Even if she escaped from the hands of this monster, it wouldn't save her. She unbuttoned her shirt, looked at the device inside her body, and said that she was so ugly. She had to follow the plan. She returned to the room with the others. MC called her and asked if she was okay. If anything, they had a change of clothes. What happened to her face? Raina walked up to him, poked her fingers in his face to make him smile, and said that it was better this way. She started to leave and said that she still had some things to do, so she would go back to her room. She turned to him with a sad expression and said that he should remember, no matter what happens next, the most important thing is a smile. After some time, he thought of the Rambad Kingdom, the venue for the Magic Academy tournament. It is 3 days sailing distance from the Embarred Kingdom. Besides, it is a tropical country. They all got to the city together, and Mashiro said in a cheerful tone that they had arrived in the Rambad Kingdom. He said that all this was thanks to the magical ship Rebecca. He thanked Karen, and she said that everything was fine. She was glad that she had come here with them. After all, she needed to support him. It was okay if her father was a little unhappy. He apologized, and she grabbed his hand and said that it was especially since it was a beautiful tropical paradise. The girls changed into swimsuits and said that they were going to the beach. He looked at their outfits and said that these clothes suited them all very well. How about going for a swim in the sea? They agreed and went to the sea. He stood behind and thought that, since then, nothing had happened between him and Raina. However, now she came in a swimsuit under a t-shirt. Was she teasing him like that? After this tournament of Magic Academies is over, she will be his. However, for this, he needs to win the tournament. He must make her acknowledge his power. Now, physical skills will not be enough to attract her attention. Who is a master in magic? She approached him while he was lying on a lounge chair and asked if he wanted to go swimming. He said that he was thinking for a bit. She asked, is he thinking about the tournament? Mashiro came to them and said that it was so hot here, she can't take it anymore. She lay down on a towel, and Ogre said that he knew it. Ice mages are often vulnerable to heat. Chris asked what they should do. He said that she needed to lie in the shade and drink water. Raina asked, then how about this? She took out a drink and said it was Rambad iced tea. She brought some for everyone. The girls looked at it and said it looked delicious. He drank it and said the aroma was unusual, but it was delicious, as expected from the president. She said she was glad they liked it. The trick is to crush the tea leaves by hand before brewing. He asked how she got so many details. She said that the Rambad Kingdom is her homeland. He wondered if this is her homeland. Then why does she live here and take the surname Milfanti? Wait, now is not the time to ask about that. Mashiro drank the tea, stood up and said with a determined look that thanks to the president's tea, she felt much better. She needs to get used to training. This will be training. Raina looked at her and said that there was nothing invigorating in that tea. She should rest a little more. She turned to her and said that it was okay. The president had high hopes for her. She was very happy and would definitely succeed, so she should keep an eye on her. They started to leave, and she called out to her and thanked her. But while they weren't looking, she had a very sad expression on her face. Mashiro said that they should have a beach volleyball match. Karen asked if it was okay that it was a 3-on-2 game. The protagonist said that it was okay, because there was a real monster among them. They started playing, and he said that although it was harmless training to get them used to the local climate, winning didn't matter. They didn't need to strain themselves too much. Chris jumped up, hit the ball with her hand very hard, scored, and announced the score in a very serious tone. He looked at her in horror and thought that it seemed like someone was extremely serious. She wasn't even thinking about weakening her blow. It turns out that he was the only one who could stand up to this Amazon. He said loudly that they both should step back and that he would handle it. Karen asked why they were even needed here. Chris said loudly in a very serious voice that she would give it her all. Alban ran up to them and called for the boss, who at that moment blocked a very strong blow from a ball that was thrown at him. The ball hit him in the head, and he hit himself very hard and fell to the ground. They turned to him and called his name. After that, he stood up and said that it was an amazing coincidence and that he didn't expect to see them here. Raina looked at him and asked who he was. Chris turned to her and said that he was a subordinate. He said with a happy expression that, as he had ordered, he had been killing bad people all over the region. He asked for praise, but MC refused and asked why he was on the beach and not in some bad area. It was a place for tourists, after all. He said the thing is, if you follow the distribution of the banned extract, you can find the villain's hideout. That's how they track them. but it seems there's something more serious going on in this Rambad. The boss has to be careful, someone's up to no good. After some time, the day before the tournament, participants from different countries began flocking to the hotel. Meanwhile, he suffered an injury completely unrelated to the tournament. Chris, with a very worried expression on her face, held a bandage in her hands, which she wrapped around his hands and asked for forgiveness. She said that it was all because of her lack of restraint. He said that she did not need to apologize, because he himself ordered not to relax, although they were only planning to adapt to the local climate. The tournament begins tomorrow, so it's on time. He is grateful that she showed him the weakness in his defense. She was touched by his words, and he thought that a strong body is not enough to avoid injury, although it is unlikely that someone like her will participate in such competitions. However, he must be prepared. He needs to think of strategies for defending against magic. Mashiro came to them and said that she brought Karen. Is the arm she injured still not healed? She specializes in healing magic. She said that she is no match for the president, but now Dean Florin has called her to her office. He asked if the dean is here now. She agreed and said that she will take care of the arm. She used healing magic, instantly healing his hands, and he thanked her with surprise. She placed her hand on Mashiro's shoulder and said that if anyone should be thanked, it was her. Earlier at the reception area, the employee said that outsiders were not allowed in. She said that, however, her friend was injured. She heard that he still hadn't been healed. Could they please let this person through? The employee asked. She's a competitor. What's her name? She introduced herself with a confused look, and they, with haughty smirks, said that they had heard of her. She was that commoner, and her friend was a loser from the Verret family, right? Karen was indignant about this, and she raised her hand to stop her. Mashiro, with a calm expression, said that if they wanted to laugh at her situation, then she didn't care, but she would not allow them to make fun of him. She took her hand, and they both went inside. Despite the staff's attempts to stop them, Karen said that she looked so cool. She was very embarrassed by this, and asked why she told him about it. She felt awkward now. Ogre thought with a little surprise that she had changed. She used to be afraid of the aristocrats, but now she had become so strong. He went to them, thanked them, and asked, however, if there were still people who underestimated them. In that case, isn't that a reason to give it their all? She agreed, and he thought that these idiots should watch and remember. Soon, they will tremble at their strength. At the same time, Florin was sitting on a luxurious chair in the laboratory, called Rain, and said that she had no longer hoped, but she was able to pleasantly surprise her. Now Verret and Rice, participants in the tournament as planned. She thanked her for the praise with a calm expression, but she, with a not very pleased look, said that it was not praise. She should be able to handle such tasks. She will take possession of this girl who has a talent for different types of magic. She knows what to do, right? She turned away with a slightly worried look, and she noticed this and asked what was wrong with her. Had she really managed to become attached to her? She hesitantly tried to deny it, and the dean manipulated some object next to her and asked, she understands this, right? In case of betrayal, she will make her experience something more terrible than death. Her wisdom and skills, she will use them to the fullest to make her suffer. She knows this better than anyone, how excruciating pain can be, right? If she understands, then she can go. Raina left this room, breathing heavily from horror, and began to cry. She tried to calm down, and thought that tears would only interfere with her mission. Smiling in any situation, that's the most important thing. She came to the hall. Mashiro noticed her, and said that here is the student council president. The protagonist said that she was too late. The tournament draw was almost over. She pretended to be happy and thought that she shouldn't worry. She could do it. She suggested going. They sat down at the table, and he asked why the dean had called her. She said it was because of a couple of little things. He didn't pay any attention to it and asked if she had already eaten. She denied it, and he said that there was an open buffet. She declined, thanked him for the offer, and said that she wasn't hungry. He was very surprised by this and said loudly that she couldn't do anything on an empty stomach. If she wanted anything, she could just say so. She agreed and thought, was he her mother? Several people entered the hall and asked if all the players had already gathered. Yes, it was about to start very soon. The guy walked towards Rain, called her by name, and loudly said that they should see who was here. She turned around and Shelba Ansem, a third-year student at Mission Academy, said loudly that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He said his name with a confident look, and MC looked at him and wondered where that noisy idiot came from. He said his name loudly again and said that he gives her credit. She came back no matter what. He looked at her and thought, she doesn't like him either, right? He loudly asked how she could appear so calmly after losing to Mission Academy last year. It was Richburg's first defeat, after all. Why did Professor Florin take such a girl as her student? He turned to her, ignoring him, and asked, who the hell is this clown? She said that he wanted to become the dean's student, but the professor rejected him. He said that it is understandable, so he is just offended. Shelba became very angry about this and loudly asked what kind of views they have. They would not be so arrogant if they saw his abilities. There just hadn't been a suitable opportunity yet. At this tournament, he would finally be able to show his skills to the professor. She thought he was still as annoying as ever, unbearable. Whatever he said, she couldn't take it normally. He stood next to them and said that, by the way, he knew him. He was that loser from the famous Verret family. What was she even thinking? Dragging this mediocrity here? She remained silent, but looked at him with a serious expression. A man came onto the stage and loudly said that he apologized for the delay. They were beginning the drawing of lots for the Magic Academy tournament. The hosts, that's them, the team in charge of the competition. Now they were inviting one representative from each academy. Raina went to the stage and said that they shouldn't worry. She would go herself. He agreed and thanked her for it. Representatives from 9 schools came out, and the man said that they should take tickets with random numbers and they would find out the results. It's a surprising coincidence that the first match will be between last year's winners, Misun Academy, and the runners-up, Richburg Academy. She returned to her teammates, apologized, and said that it seemed like she wasn't having much luck. Shelba quickly ran up to them, laughed loudly, and said that this was an amazing turn of events. He was excited. They would win again this year. He looked at him with a displeased expression and asked if someone had invited him. She laughed and said that it promised to be interesting. He looked at her with displeasure and said that she always does this, pretending to be polite, but actually looking down on him. She said with a smile that this simply couldn't be true. He laughed loudly again and said that, however, this time her self-confidence was clearly misplaced. This guy was just worthless trash. Suddenly, lightning appeared at that moment, engulfing Rain, and she said in a frightening tone that if she just remained silent and listened, this empty chatter would continue endlessly. In case he hadn't guessed, he was too intrusive. He was very scared because of this. Started to run away and loudly said that it was enough for today, but he would not leave it like that. She must prepare for tomorrow's defeat. She started drinking tea, and Ogre laughed loudly because of this. He looked at her and asked, "So she still knows how to openly show her emotions?" She turned away with a little embarrassment and thought, did her behavior seem strange to him? He said that he was grateful to her for getting angry because of him. She looked at him with a little confusion and thought, was she angry because of him? Of course, she doesn't know when it happened, but at some point he became an important part of her life. Later, he carried the sleeping Mashiro on his back and called out to Raina, who was walking next to him. He said she was a good person, which made him want her even more. She was very embarrassed by this, remembered the past, and asked, wait, what does he mean this time? He smirked because of this and said that he meant that he wanted her to be their friend. First, he must show her his abilities so that she would appreciate him. She should wait until tomorrow's match. She would definitely be surprised. The next day, the host loudly announced that the tournament between Magic Academies had begun. The very first match attracted special attention. They will start with a team that possesses a powerful combination of lightning and fire. The Magic Academy Mission. Their opponents, a team with unknown potential, former champions, Richburg Academy. Both teams entered the arena, and the announcer said, okay, Shelba from Misun Academy, Raina from Richburg Academy, the team captains should step forward. They should shake hands for a fair fight. They shook hands and began to disperse. He chuckled, called her over, and said that she would regret teaming up with this trash. She should remember his words. She turned around and asked with a confused look, did he say something? He became indignant about this, and said loudly that she shouldn't pretend she didn't hear anything, because he had a commanding voice. She agreed and said that he said he would make her regret it. However, as long as these two were with her, nothing like that would happen. She hoped that he was truly looking forward to his defeat. He became a little wary because of this and wondered what it meant. Why is she so confident in them? They don't have any information about this commoner, but the fact that she was able to enter Richburg as a commoner means that she is a good mage. Mashiro stumbled and said with an embarrassed expression that she stumbled over nothing. He was confused by what he saw and wondered, what kind of stereotypical clumsiness was this? Was she also a top student? She probably got here through dishonest means. If anyone could be a problem, it was Verret. Although he has no magical ability, he is still the heir to a corrupt family. You never know what kind of cunning tricks he might resort to. He has no magical ability? Then how can he participate in the magic tournament? He began to laugh loudly and thought that this was so ridiculous that he decided to be wary of it. He loudly called out to his comrades and said that it was obvious that victory would be theirs. Marka, with a displeased expression, asked him to be quiet. The host loudly declared that in that case, the match would begin. Both teams immediately ran towards each other, and the protagonist called them over and said that they should act according to plan. They agreed, and he thought that, based on last year's data, the Misun team's playstyle was simple. Marka and Bowden used lightning magic to paralyze the opponent, and their captain finished off with fire magic. Shelba loudly declared that they should deal with Rice and Verret, while he would hold off Milfonti. They agreed and simultaneously used lightning strike magic. Mashiro, who was faster, used the gust of wind spell and threw them into the air. He chuckled at what he saw and asked, is that just the wind element? She crossed her arms in front of her with a sly grin and asked, is he sure about that? She used the icy wind spell, immobilizing his allies, which greatly surprised everyone present. The host loudly asked, did she use ice magic? This is something new. Rice's student seems to have mastered different elements. Could that have been a double cast? The enemy team was shocked by this, and she loudly called out to the MC and said that it was his turn now. Bowden hit the ground hard and the ice that bound him was broken. Marka screamed loudly in fear and thought that she was about to fall to the ground. He ran up to her and carefully caught her in his arms. She looked at him with surprise and confusion and wondered if the enemy student saved her. He asked if she couldn't land normally. The host loudly said that she seemed shocked by Verit's action. He hit her hard on the forehead with his finger, and she lost consciousness and fell to the floor. The host loudly said that she was passed out, that she lost consciousness from the hit with his finger. She has hearts instead of eyes. Is that some kind of magic? Bowden ran towards him about to attack, but he kicked him in the stomach and told him that he should calm down and get some sleep already. The announcer loudly announced that Verit had knocked out 2 opponents. Only Ansem, the captain of Team Misan, remained. Shelba looked at him with a shocked expression and wondered, who was he? How could one fight someone who didn't obey the laws of physics? He ran towards him and loudly said that he should stop underestimating him. Raina started using magic and asked what was going on. Was it hard for him to control what was happening now? She struck magic next to him and said that she had time to prepare. He looked at it and said that it was a thunder whip. He dodged her attacks, and the announcer asked, she was using lightning like a whip? Was that even possible? It wasn't for nothing that she was a student of Florin Milfonte herself. She smirked and said in a serious tone that he should stop resisting. It didn't hurt. His body would just go a little numb, and that was it. The announcer looked at her with embarrassment and thought that she was beautiful, but so dangerous. Shelba looked at her with a serious expression and cast the fire arrow spell. She deflected the attack with her whip. He began to attack more actively, but she calmly deflected all his magical attacks. The announcer loudly announced that player Ansem was responding with fire magic. The forces were equal, and the contact of flame and lightning caused explosions. Mashiro, with a frightened expression, stood next to Ogre, who looked at him calmly. He thought it was no wonder he asked to be Florina's apprentice. His abilities were impressive. Shelba continued to attack with magic and loudly asked, how is this for her? He apologized for interrupting their fun, but that was only the beginning. Soon he would bury their entire team. Raina continued to deflect his attacks and said that this was indeed a problem. There was still something she wanted him to do. Her allies had become dear to her. He would have to answer for insulting them. She turned to them, called him, and asked, she's right, right? The protagonist calmly agreed, and he looked at him and wondered, is this guy closing his eyes? He began to get very nervous and thought that he was clearly planning something. He needed to hurry. He used the fire bullet spell with maximum magic power and created a huge magic circle. The host was worried about what he saw and loudly announced that the people in the front row should evacuate immediately. Player Verit should immediately dodge. He calmly looked at his opponent and thought that he saw the source of his magical power. He used the magic calming spell. He removed his source of magic. Shelba immediately noticed this and wondered, is his magic disappearing? At that moment, Mashiro used the Ice Storm spell and attacked him. The host loudly announced that this was the end. Player Rice's ice magic neutralized Player Ansem's flames. With this, the match ended. The result was a victory for Richburg Academy. He lay on the floor and thought that it wasn't her magic. What just happened was that guy's doing. After some time, he punched the wall hard, cried, and said loudly that it was all because of that freak. A man in a robe approached him from behind, called out to him, and asked if he needed power. He turned to him and said that he was in the thick of it. Was he really so pathetic that some cultist was recruiting him? He didn't care anymore. If he had the power to defeat Verit, he was asking for it. The man came closer, injected some substance into his neck, and he immediately screamed loudly in pain. Sometime later at the hotel for the participants during dinner, the surprised people loudly called out to the Richburg team and said that their performance was simply magnificent. She saw a student with a double cast for the first time. Milfonte is a worthy student of Florin. Could Rice elaborate on the move she used to finish Ansem off? People kept praising them, but they were unhappy about it and wondered when they would shut up. Chris stood next to his friends, who were incredibly happy, and loudly said that this arrogant idiot would lie in a hospital bed for a whole year. Alban said that of course, the blow hit right on target. Even goosebumps ran down his spine. Karen said that Marco was very lucky. She also wanted to fall from a height and be caught. MC, looking a little tired, thought that now there was a lively discussion here too. What was he even doing here? This was a great demonstration of how talented his allies were. He sat down on the couch. Raina came up to him and asked if he was tired already. He agreed and said that he would like to rest quickly. Mashiro sat down next to him and, looking tired, said that she too had used up all her magic and was now like a squeezed lemon. She came closer with a small smile and said that she wanted to talk about his skill. When she heard about it at the meeting, she found it hard to believe. However, it was wonderful. He should drink this tea to relieve fatigue. Chris approached them and asked joyfully, is this the same tea where the main thing is to crush the leaves correctly? She asked to teach her how to brew tea for the master correctly. Karen walked with her and asked to teach her this too. She agreed, and they all began crushing the tea leaves together with very serious faces. They opened their hands and asked loudly in horror, what is this? How it stinks. He looked at them and started laughing, and they turned around and asked loudly, what's the matter? Raina poured the leaves into the teapot and said that these are very capricious tea leaves. You can't press them too hard or too lightly. Everything is not as simple as it seems. Ogre looked at this and said that he understood. That's why her scent is so different. He took her hand, asked her to let him smell it and started smelling her hand. He called her by name and said that she smelled nice. She was very embarrassed because of this, and the others were looking at them. He noticed this and thought that he made a mistake. They saw everything. Their looks are so cold, as if they want to freeze him. He said in a frighteningly serious tone that he behaves inappropriately in public. When did they manage to get so close? Does it matter that his fiancée is standing nearby? She started laughing, which really angered them, and they loudly said that it wasn't funny. She apologized and said that it was just a funny moment. She stopped laughing and thought it was surprising. She was having so much fun, probably because she was in such company. The maid Chris, who was always overly caring about him. The sweet and protective Rice. The respectful Rebecca, who was a member of the student council. And he, who said that he also wanted to see her as his friend and comrade. She was very pleased to hear this. However, she asked them for forgiveness. At that moment, a man in a black robe flew in through the window. Everyone present was very surprised by this and loudly asked, "Who is this? What is going on here?" This man created a magic circle and began to attack everyone present with fireballs. This man was mumbling something unintelligible, and the main character looked at him and wondered, "Who is this?" Alban loudly called the boss and said that apparently he was using a stimulating potion. The teacher loudly called the students and said that they should run from here and leave this to the teachers. The stranger turned to his team and again created a magic circle to attack. He looked at it and wondered, is he aiming at them? He can't use his skill here. He called Chris. She immediately grabbed the sword and agreed with the master. She immediately ran towards him, dodged the magic attack with a jump, and swung her sword in midair. She landed deftly and dealt a very strong blow with the sword, which wounded him. He began to roar loudly, and she pointed the sword at him and asked with a serious look, does he even know who is standing in front of him? What is his goal? If he does not tell, the next blow will be fatal. This stranger directed his magic at the floor and released smoke, and this made her retreat. She loudly ordered him to stop, but he jumped back out the window. She sheathed her sword and said she was sorry for letting it go. The MC went to her and said it was okay. She did everything she could. He wondered who it was. Was he aiming at them? Or rather, at him? He said they should return to their rooms. The next day, the host said that the second stage, which was supposed to take place today, has been postponed. The participants who were injured in the attack are currently in the infirmary. Until everything is settled, could they help them, the members of the organizing committee, in catching the attacker? They wouldn't like to involve the Richburg Academy students, but almost everyone who can help right now, including the teachers, is busy. It might be dangerous, but they demonstrated their abilities brilliantly yesterday, so they are really hoping for their help. Ogre said that it seemed like the attacker was aiming at them, or rather, at him. He agrees to help them. Do they have any plan? He agreed and said that, as he said, this person seemed to be targeting him specifically. He said that he didn't know who it was, but there was a high chance that he would return, and that's when they would set up an ambush. He said with a smile that it was not bad, simple and clear. He turned to his allies and asked, will everyone be able to handle this? Raina approached Mashiro and said that they both used up a lot of mana yesterday, so they couldn't help them today. Could they rest in the room? She walked away from her, denied it, and said that she could handle it. She slept a lot and ate a lot. She approached her again, stretched out her hands to her face, and said that she shouldn't strain herself so much. After all, he and Chris were here. They could be relied on. The host said that she was right. This maid could replace 100 people. She still agreed, and the protagonist looked at her with a wary look and thought that this was strange, that something was wrong with her. Usually, in such cases, she pushes forward. Florin probably calls her often. Then it is not surprising that she is tired. He still agreed and said that they can rest today. He and Chris are quite enough for this. Alban called the boss and asked what about him. Raina began to lead her out of this room and said that they are relying on them. After some time, they came to the room. She laughed and said that he was waiting for him. He wants to avenge the defeat, right? Or has he already lost consciousness? She called Shelba, who was lying in a black robe on the floor next to her and suffering from a severe wound. After that, she approached Mashiro, who was lying unconscious, and said in an arrogant tone that at least she had the opportunity to be alone with her, which was what she needed. To be honest, she hoped that he would fight back against Chris, but she is a real monster. She reached out to her face and said that it was time for her to get to work. She will give it to teacher Florna. She hugged her, but introduced MC, who called her and asked where Mashiro was. Was it she who kidnapped her? He demanded an answer from her, which made her take her hands away from her and say that it was useless. She can't stop thinking about him. He will be upset if she steals her, and she will be sad too. She stopped in front of the door, looked at it and asked, maybe we should sort this out first? At the same time, Alban called the boss and said that the potion that man used was some kind of strange. Apparently, it just increases strength, but that doesn't make sense. He looked at him with a puzzled look and asked why he thinks so. He said that such potions are only for scum like them, who have no magical talent. He saw a wizard using it for the first time. He thought that the masked man was using some kind of new potion. Isn't he the one who produces and develops the extract in this country? Why is such a person hunting them? Isn't this a doping for magicians? If they can do that, wait, shouldn't it have a mana-boosting effect? If anything, there are probably other similar substances. They heard a loud sound coming from the upper floor, and Ogre asked if they were ready. His friends agreed, and at that moment, Shelba broke the ceiling and descended into this hall. Alban jumped towards him and with a confident look, loudly told this idiot that mages are weak in close combat. When he struck, he unexpectedly dodged his blow with incredible speed and delivered a powerful kick. Because of this, he was thrown into the presenter, and they both lost consciousness. He saw this, aimed his hand at him, and used the skill Magic Calming. However, his opponent created a magic circle with incredible speed using maximum mana. He used the 1,000 Fire Bullets spell, and he looked at it with a shocked expression and wondered, what the hell is this? Is this all the effect of the potion? Now he is much stronger than yesterday. There's no way to use the skill, and he will hardly be able to dodge all the bullets. What should he do? There must be some way out. Chris swung her sword and used the Flower Slicing Strike skill. With this strike, she dispelled the magic, and he called her name in surprise. She looked at him with a serious expression and said that his killing intent was real. Was he really aiming for the master? She became incredibly angry because of this and said loudly that this is it. Her patience has run out. She will not leave even a wet spot on him. He must prepare for this. He was about to use magic again, but she said with a serious expression that she had enough of these games. She used the Petal Slicing Strike skill and released a powerful wave of energy. Ogre looked at it in surprise and thought that this was Chris's true power. However, would it be enough? She looked at him with a serious expression and wondered if the blow had worked or not. She expected the effect to be stronger. He placed his hand on the floor and created a magic circle, which released a powerful wave of energy. He was thrown hard into the wall, and he thought that he did not have time to dodge. She loudly called out to her master and asked if he was okay. He agreed, and she said that she apologized for being late. She was very badly hurt by this attack, and he called her name loudly in a worried tone. She began to fall, but he caught her and loudly told her to stop. They needed to retreat. She removed his hand from herself, refused, and said that this man had attempted on her lord's life. If they let him go now, he'll appear again. She has to grab him. As the master's sword, she must protect him, even with her life. She turned to him with a small smile and said that this was her calling. He called out to her with a worried look. Shelba looked at her and said that she was a real monster. She quickly ran towards him, but he used magic, and she was forced to jump back. Chris said that he was using it again. She thought, wait, this isn't for an attack, a smokescreen. Does he want to escape? She attacked, and at that very moment, the injured people began to come to their senses. They all approached him and were very surprised when they saw Shelba, who was injured. The host said that everything fits together. It was an attack because of the loss in the last match. It turns out that he wanted to take revenge on the students from Richburg Academy, and he has the element of fire. How stupid to sacrifice his body for something like this. The protagonist thought, not even taking into account yesterday, could it really be him? Does this mean he became even stronger thanks to the doping extract? The host said that they were very grateful to them. The administration would take care of everything else. He put Chris's hand on his shoulder and said that they should go back to the room. She was very embarrassed by this and said that she was grateful to my lord for his concern. He apologized with a guilty look and said that if he had completed that technique, he would not have caused her such injuries. She looked at him with a kind smile and said that regret did not suit him. It was a mere trifle. Besides, as far as she understood, that technique was almost ready. All that remained was to master it. He laughed and asked, was she even now talking about training? Karen was on the ship. They should ask Rain to use healing. She agreed and said that it would not hurt. The people standing behind them began to cough and said that what a peculiar aroma it was. MC also smelled the tea aroma and with a shocked expression, thought that this couldn't be true. The next day, someone from the administration said that an announcement had been made to all participants. Due to the recent events, they would unfortunately have to cancel the tournament. They should be careful on their way back. See you next year. He looked at the sailing ships through the window and thought that the situation was more serious than he thought. If his assumptions were correct, their forces would not be enough. Then he should make a counter-move. He gave the bird a letter addressed to the Honorable Gordon Verrett. The bird flew away through the magic circle, and he came to the empty arena and said that he knew it was her. He called out to Rain, who stood before him in a black robe and looked at him with a smirk. At the same time, on the magical ship that belonged to the Rebachenka family, Mashiro woke up and yawned very loudly. Karen looked at her and said that it was a surprisingly deep yawn. She said that she had been kind of sleepy since yesterday. Ogre and Raina haven't returned yet? At the same time, in the arena, she said that it was surprising how quickly he saw through her. She did use fire elemental magic. After all, he said that he heard from Alban about a doping extract for mages. What she used was some kind of elemental change. She agreed and said that, however, this doesn't prove that it was her. Then, how did he know? He said that it was because of the scent of tea that remained on her hand. She was surprised by this and asked with a haughty look, if he can distinguish women by smell? That sounds very strange. He didn't pay attention to it and asked, is her target Mashiro? She asked, is it really that obvious? That's right. The teacher entrusted her with 2 important tasks. to bring rice so that she can become the next vessel for the mentor, and to kill him, since he knows a very dangerous technique called delete. He said with a little surprise that, however, it seems that not everything is going according to plan. She agreed, and he asked what the next host meant. She said that it was literally, the teacher's body will soon exhaust its life force. She was chosen as a shell to transfer the soul and prolong the teacher's life. He said with a displeased look that this was no longer just bad taste. She agreed and said that at first they tried to make her a host, subjecting her to improvements, but she apparently did not fit. This caught his attention, and she said that, by the way, she never showed him her secret. She threw off her robe, unbuttoned her shirt to show what they did to her body, and asked, "It's disgusting, isn't it?" Even after this, he will still invite her to his team? The protagonist looked at it in horror and wondered, what is this? Something like devices, magic amplification, and body enhancement? All this was implanted into her body without her consent, as if she were some kind of construction set. He felt very sorry for her. He hugged her and said that he would still say it. He asked her to come with him. She was touched by this, took hold of his sleeve and embarrassedly said how good she felt. She didn't even think that he would accept her. Seeing this, she is sincerely happy. When she is next to him, she is always surprised, happy, and feels happy. She started to cry and said that this is why it hurts her so much. She turned away, started to button her shirt, and he asked if she knew why it hurt. It was because deep down she wanted to be with them, not to obey Florin's orders. She was very surprised by what she heard, grabbed her head and said loudly that he should stop. He doesn't understand what will happen if he disobeys this man. Teacher Florin's orders are the law. He came up to her and said that she shouldn't listen to her orders anymore because he will deal with her. She tearfully asked him to stop, but he didn't listen and said that she should trust him. She closed her eyes and said loudly that he should stop doing this. He shouldn't give her unrealistic hopes. He should stop putting this in her head. Raina released a very powerful energy and said loudly that he can't talk anymore. He should die. MC, looking upset, said that he understood her. He became serious and said loudly that she should go to him immediately. She used the lightning strike spell, jumped towards him and swung her leg to kick. He responded with a kick, but she was stronger and threw him aside. He slammed into the wall very hard, and she used the 16 lightning arrows spell with incredible speed. The spell hit him and he screamed loudly in pain. She walked up to him with a smirk and asked, "Wow, is this really his maximum? Did he seriously think he could defeat Professor Flornet?" He chuckled and said that she was so impudent. He thought that, however, it seemed that she was the one suffering here. He felt it from her attacks, her anger, confusion, sadness, and the hope that she still placed in him. She raised her hand above her head and used the lightning sword dance spell. He calmly looked at the sword of energy that flew at him and screamed loudly in pain. She was very surprised by this and loudly asked what he was doing. Why didn't he dodge again? He laughed, kneeling in front of her and asked, "Isn't this what she wanted?" Before, he responded simply based on reflexes, but he had no reason to attack her. He had already made his choice. There would be no response. He would withstand her strongest attack, and if he didn't die, then it would be his victory. She asked with a confused look, what kind of nonsense was this? He would simply die. Ogre chuckled and said that she understood that she wasn't even trying to hit him seriously. By the way, he's not one to throw words to the wind, and he has a plan. She said that he had no chance of using his technique. It wouldn't work, because she knew the principle of it. He denied it and said that he was talking about something else, the absolute defense technique that they developed with Chris. She started to get nervous and said that such a thing doesn't happen. He asked if she thought the same about his technique at first, right? He would defeat Florin for her and wouldn't die from her magic. He called her by name and said that she should believe him. She clenched her teeth, tears started flowing again, and she thought that he always listened to her nonsense, worried about her, always joked, and always smiled. For her, this is the most precious thing. She started to sob, screamed loudly, pointed her hands at him, and used the Thunder Cannon magic spell. She fired a very powerful beam of energy at him point blank, and was breathing heavily due to the fatigue from this attack. He lay on the floor in front of her, and she laughed and thought she had killed him. She fell to her knees and began to cry loudly. She began to concentrate energy in her hands, but stopped when he grabbed her hand and loudly said that he was still alive. Raina was shocked by this, reached out to him, called his name, and the protagonist said that he was still far from perfect. He called it overcoming the limit. He was able to sit up, stroked her head, and said that he had won, so they should live together. She continued to cry, agreed, and he thought his role was over. He fell to the ground, apologized, and said he needed to get some sleep. Before losing consciousness, he thought that he would rely on his father from now on. Meanwhile, on the ship, Gordon greeted the Richburg representatives.